Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. In the summer of 1998 in Los Angeles, California, while Landon Sinclair and Ashley Brown were walking home after dinner, they accidentally bumped into two men who appeared to be rough and tumble elements in the area. Ashley accidentally bumped into one of them, leading to an argument. In the heat of the moment, Landon chose to remain silent and stand back, leaving Ashley to face the two men alone. This frustrated Ashley, who asked to break up, leading to a heated argument when they got home. In a fit of rage and helplessness, Landon attacked Ashley, beating her to death. Landon and Ashley met one evening in the late fall of 1996 at a social event hosted by mutual friends. It was a cozy but not overly crowded party, and neither of them was initially aware of each other's presence. Ashley, with her outgoing nature, quickly joins in conversations and laughs with everyone around her. She is a positive energy person, always shining in a crowd, making everyone feel comfortable and attractive. Meanwhile, Landon, a quieter and more reserved man, stood in the far corner of the room, not really joining in on the lively conversation. He preferred to observe rather than participate, and that evening was no exception. Landon was not the type to attend social parties, but his friends had convinced him to come, hoping that the event would help him open up. The first glance between Landon and Ashley happened by accident. As she was looking for a more comfortable seat, their eyes met. It was a brief moment, but enough for both of them to feel a strange connection. Ashley, being outgoing by nature, walked over and started a conversation with Landon. She smiled and introduced herself in a confident and cute way that Landon couldn't refuse. Starting with small talk about work, hobbies, and life, they quickly realized that they had more in common than they initially imagined. While Ashley was drawn to Landon's calm and thoughtfulness, Landon saw an energy in her that he had never encountered in anyone else. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also smart, funny, and had a passion that Landon admired. She made him feel comfortable, something he rarely felt around other people. On the contrary, Ashley found Landon an interesting difference from the men she had met. His calm and quiet nature gave her a sense of security and stability. After just a few weeks of dating, Landon and Ashley quickly became attached. They spent a lot of time together, from walks in the park to dinners at fancy restaurants. Landon, who often worked in a dry and stressful technology environment, began to find life easier with Ashley by his side. She brought him joy and freshness that he never thought he needed. Their love was not only based on their differences, but also on how they complemented each other. Ashley always encourages Landon to step out of his comfort zone and try new things, while Landon helps Ashley learn to be still, reflect, and find balance in her busy life. They became the perfect couple in the eyes of their friends and family. Although their relationship progressed quickly, Landon and Ashley were in no rush to make any big decisions. They enjoy every moment together and find happiness in the little things, like weekend afternoons reading books or watching movies together. However, behind that perfection, there were still hidden differences between the two. But at that time, neither Landon nor Ashley cared too much about them. They were still immersed in the love and new joy that the relationship brought. After dating for a while, Landon and Ashley decided to move in together in a small, pretty apartment located in a quiet area of Los Angeles. At first, their life together was filled with joy and happiness. Every day was a new experience as they explored the city, took short trips, and enjoyed cozy dinners at their favorite restaurants. Romantic moments are common in their lives, from cooking together, watching movies, to staying up all night talking about the future. But then, the differences in personality began to show. Ashley, with her energetic, strong, and proactive personality, gradually realized that she needed more from Landon. She wanted him to be not only a lover, but also a man who would protect her and always stand by her, especially in times of stress or conflict. Landon, however, reacts in the opposite way. In stressful situations, he often chooses to stay silent, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. He believes that staying calm and not confronting will help calm things down. But this makes Ashley feel that he doesn't care enough to protect her. One of the first events that caused conflict between the two was when they attended a small party with friends. While the party was over, the two of them were on their way home when they accidentally bumped into two men, one of whom was rude to Ashley, and she expected Landon to intervene. However, he just stood by and watched, thinking that it was better to not react than to cause trouble. This left Ashley extremely frustrated and angry. She felt abandoned and unprotected at a time when she needed him most. Landon's silence, in Ashley's eyes, gradually became an expression of indifference. She began to feel insecure and increasingly demanding of his attention. She wanted him to show more affection, to protect her not only with words but also with actions. But Landon kept a low profile and avoided confrontation, which only widened the gap between them. Meanwhile, Landon felt pressured by Ashley's expectations. He loved her, but he couldn't understand why his actions couldn't satisfy her. For Landon, keeping quiet was a way to keep the peace, to avoid pointless arguments. But he didn't realize that his silence was pushing Ashley away. After the argument on the street ended and the two violent men left, the atmosphere between Landon and Ashley became ominously heavy. Landon could see the disappointment in Ashley's eyes. She didn't say a word, but her silence was louder than any scream or criticism. They continued walking home in silence, and each step seemed to lengthen the tension that was building inside Ashley. Ashley had always been strong and not afraid to take on a confrontation, but this time she felt completely abandoned. The small incident on the road, while not violent, exposed what she had always worried about. Landon was not someone she could rely on when things got tense. She's always wanted a strong partner who would stand up for her. But tonight Landon chose to stay silent and step back, leaving her alone to face two dangerous men. For Ashley, this was unacceptable. When they got back to the apartment, the tension between them continued. Ashley, unable to contain her anger and hurt, decided to speak up about what she was feeling. Landon, why didn't you say anything? You just stood there, leaving me to deal with those two guys. I don't know what you were thinking. Landon, surprised by Ashley's outburst, tried to stay calm. He felt that his actions were reasonable, avoiding unnecessary confrontation and keeping things under control. Ashley, I don't want to cause trouble. We don't know who they are, and if I interfered, it could have been worse. I just want to keep both of us safe. Stay safe, Ashley laughed, a bitter laugh. You don't understand. I don't need you to fight or anything. I just need you to stand by me, to let me know you're there, that you'll protect me if I need you. But you stood back. You left me to face those two guys alone. Do you know how I felt? Landon was silent, trying to find the words to explain. But his explanations did not satisfy Ashley. To her, it was not just a coincidence, but a sign of Landon's weakness and passivity, something she had sensed all along but had not dared to face. I thought you would be different, Landon. I thought you would be stronger, more assertive. But tonight you showed me that you are not someone I can rely on when things get tough. Landon looked at her, his eyes filled with hurt. He loved Ashley and had always thought that calm and control was the best way to protect their relationship. But now he realized that Ashley needed something else. I'm sorry if you feel disappointed, but I really think I did the right thing. I just don't want things to get worse. That's the problem, Landon. Ashley replied. You're always avoiding, always choosing to retreat instead of confronting. I can't live with someone like that. I need someone who can stand by me, not retreat when things go wrong. The conversation quickly turned into an argument. All the emotions that both of them had kept bottled up all this time finally exploded. Differences in personality, outlook on life, and problem-solving become the reasons why they cannot understand each other. Ashley, who craves protection and strength from her partner, cannot accept Landon's silence and passivity. Meanwhile, Landon feels pressured, forced to be someone he is not, and this makes him feel exhausted. I think I need some time to think things over, Ashley finally said, her voice sad but firm. I'm not sure I can go on like this. Landon, though heartbroken, couldn't deny that their relationship was in crisis. Their differences were no longer something that could be overlooked or compromised as easily as they had been. Both understood that this was not a simple argument but a sign of a deep rift in the relationship. Ashley, feeling hurt and insecure, leaves the apartment, saying she needs time to think about their future. Landon stands there, watching her retreat into the night, his mind abuzz with conflicting thoughts and emotions. He knows he loves her, but love is sometimes not enough to overcome such vast differences in temperament and expectations. The atmosphere in the small apartment that used to be their home was now stifling and tense. The argument between Ashley and Landon exploded violently after the events of that night. The emotions that had been pent up for so long now spilled out, and there was no way to contain them anymore. Ashley, with a broken heart and deep disappointment, constantly criticized Landon for his weakness and lack of courage. She had long felt that this relationship was no longer the same. She had hoped that Landon would change, would become a man she could rely on. But tonight, his silence in the face of the thugs on the street only confirmed Ashley's deepest fears. Landon wasn't the one she needed. He wasn't the one who could protect her, physically or emotionally. The feeling of abandonment and unprotectedness was ingrained in her, and tonight it all came crashing down. She kept blaming Landon for his silence, his indecision, his passivity, which she couldn't stand. Ashley's words were like deep cuts to Landon's self-esteem. The anger and hurt from her criticism made him start to feel cornered. He tried to explain, but his words seemed meaningless to her anger. Things quickly spiraled out of control. Ashley, in anger and frustration, asked for a divorce immediately. For her, this was the end. She no longer wanted to continue a relationship she no longer believed in. Her decisiveness was like a blow to Landon's self-esteem. He couldn't take it anymore. The feelings of rejection, of being underestimated, of being disrespected sent his mind spiraling with rage. The humiliation and pain of being insulted exploded. The restraint he had always maintained suddenly disappeared. Landon lost control. In a moment of madness, he lunged at Ashley, his hands tightening around her neck. His rage clouded his mind, making him lose consciousness of his actions. Ashley, in that moment of terror, tried to struggle free, but Landon's strength was too great. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Everything around her became blurry, and the life slowly left her body. Only when he felt Ashley's body stop moving did Landon realize the horror of what he had done. He let go, looking down at her motionless body with panic in his eyes. Reality hit him like a punch in the gut. He had killed someone, not just anyone, but the girl he had loved, the girl he had shared so many memories and emotions with. Landon stood there, his heart pounding in his chest, sweat pouring down his forehead. There was nothing but panic. He bent down, shaking Ashley, hoping this was just a nightmare. But her cold body didn't respond. She was dead, and Landon knew there was no way to save her. In a state of utter panic, conflicting thoughts swirled through his mind. Should he call the police? Should he turn himself in? But the fear of the consequences of prison, of facing the law and the condemnation of society, overwhelmed everything. Landon couldn't face the truth. He felt pushed into a dark corner with no way out. He decided to run away. In a panic, he quickly gathered a few personal belongings, stuffed them into a small bag, and quickly walked out of the apartment. On his way out, he paused at the door, taking one last look at the apartment where they had shared such happy moments. Now, it was the scene of a terrible crime. The door closed behind him, leaving Ashley's body in the cold, empty apartment. Landon didn't know where to go, what to do. He just knew he had to leave now. He stepped out into the Los Angeles night, his heart heavy and his mind in turmoil. The quiet streets no longer felt safe or familiar. Landon was now a fugitive, not only from the law but also from himself. The next day, the normally calm atmosphere at Ashley's office gradually turned to anxiety. She was a hard worker and always punctual, but today she did not show up for work and did not answer any calls or messages. At first, everyone thought she might be sick or something unexpected had happened, but as the day went by without any word from her, concern began to creep in. Several of Ashley's close colleagues called repeatedly, only to receive long, hopeless rings. No one could reach her. That afternoon, one of Ashley's coworkers decided to check on her apartment. The apartment was located in a quiet neighborhood in Los Angeles, and when the coworker arrived, the apartment door was closed, with no sign of life inside. She knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. Feeling uneasy, she immediately called the police to check on the situation. Within minutes, a team of police officers arrived at the apartment. They managed to contact the landlord and force their way inside. A cold and gloomy atmosphere immediately filled the room as the door was opened. Inside the apartment, the police discovered Ashley's lifeless body on the living room floor. Everything in the room was in disarray, as if there had been a struggle before her death. Ashley's body lay quietly in the middle of the mess, leaving behind a horrific scene. As police began their initial investigation of the scene, they found clear signs of a violent attack. There were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, and nothing had been taken, ruling out a robbery. All the details pointed to the killer being someone who was very familiar with the victim, and that the perpetrator had fled after committing the crime. The investigation quickly focused on Landon Sinclair, Ashley's boyfriend, who was living in the apartment with her. When police contacted Landon, they discovered that he had disappeared from his apartment the night before, shortly after the crime. Landon's sudden disappearance, combined with signs of a major argument between the two, made him a prime suspect in the case. Los Angeles police immediately issued a warrant for Landon Sinclair throughout the state of California and surrounding areas. Images of Landon, along with details of the case, quickly spread across the news and media. The story of a horrific murder in the heart of Los Angeles quickly became the focus of the press and public opinion. The brutality of the case and Landon's escape attracted even more public attention. As the police began a large-scale manhunt, details of the relationship between Landon and Ashley gradually emerged. Ashley's friends and co-workers offer clues about the tension in their relationship, recent arguments, and Ashley's frustration with Landon. All of this reinforced the police's belief that Landon was the one who killed his girlfriend in a fit of rage. The search for Landon became more complicated when the police could not pinpoint his exact hiding place. Landon left no clear trace, and for weeks he eluded the law. His phone calls and credit card records were monitored, but they yielded no significant leads. Landon had cut off all contact with family and friends and seemed to be hiding deep within an invisible web. Meanwhile, Landon continues to hide, trying to find a way to escape the police. With each passing day, the pressure on him increases. Places where he once felt safe are now dangers. No one can be trusted, no place to hide. As the weeks passed, he lived in fear and tension, knowing that the police would not stop searching for him until they caught up with him. After weeks on the run, Landon decided to take a bold step. He attempted to cross the border into Mexico to escape the pursuit of the U.S. police. He believed that once he crossed the border, he could start a new life, free from his past and the relentless pursuit. However, Landon underestimated the determination of the police. One ordinary morning, as Landon was preparing to cross the border into Mexico, the border police discovered him. A tense chase ensued right at the border area. Landon, knowing he had no way out, tried to escape, but the police siege was too tight. He was eventually arrested just before he could leave his territory. Landon was handcuffed, looking shocked and disappointed. The weeks of hiding were finally over, and now he had to face the harsh reality there was nowhere far enough away to escape the consequences of his actions. He would have to pay for his crimes and face the judgment of justice and public opinion. The trial took place in late 1999 and attracted much public attention. Landon Sinclair entered the courtroom looking tired, but his eyes still tried to maintain a bit of calm. During his trial, he admitted that his actions on that fateful night were the result of uncontrolled anger. Landon explained that he had no intention of killing Ashley, but only wanted to silence her during a heated argument. However, these excuses did not mitigate the crime he committed. The prosecutor did not accept Landon's reasons. They argued that although his anger was spontaneous, Landon had the ability to control himself, instead of resorting to violence to vent his anger on Ashley. The fact that Landon fled after committing the crime was also emphasized, showing cowardice and a lack of responsibility in facing the consequences. Ashley's family sat in court, eyes filled with tears as the heartbreaking details were recounted. No amount of excuses could ease the pain of their loss. Ultimately, the court sentenced Landon Sinclair to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder. The act of fleeing after killing Ashley also contributed to the harsher sentence. Although the case was closed with a harsh sentence, the pain of the Ashley family will never be forgotten, and the story of Landon and Ashley will remain a wound in the hearts of many. Story 2. In this story, we will take you to a shocking case at Chicago International Airport, one of the busiest transportation hubs in the United States. On June 12, 2020, Malik Johnson, a 40-year-old black businessman, had a tense confrontation with Alexis Green, 32, an airport security officer. What seemed like a small conflict over security screening quickly turned into a tragedy when a few hours later Alexis was found dead in the parking lot, with a fatal gunshot wound. The case has sent shockwaves through the community, not only because of the tragic loss of a young woman, but also because of the questions surrounding racism. Was Alexis' death revenge by Malik, who felt he had been wronged? Or was there something darker at work behind the incident? Join us as we investigate the mystery and surprises that lie ahead. Malik Johnson, 40, is a successful black businessman known for his strong character and determination in his work. Born and raised in Chicago, Malik overcame many difficulties to build his own career in the real estate industry. He is intelligent, calm, but does not tolerate injustice or discrimination. With his career success, Malik often travels for work, and on June 12, 2021, his fateful trip through Chicago International Airport caused trouble for him. That day at O'Hare International Airport, Malik Johnson walked through the security check area as he always did. As a successful businessman who traveled frequently for work, Malik was familiar with the rigorous screening procedures at major airports. However, what he didn't expect was that this time, things wouldn't go as usual. When it was his turn, Malik approached the security scanner with a professional and confident demeanor. In a relaxed mood, he had no concerns about the screening process. After passing through the scanner the first time without any signs of irregularities, Malik prepared to continue walking towards the boarding gate. However, at that moment, Alexis Green, an airport security officer in charge of his area, signaled him to stop. Although Malik had passed through the scanner without any problems, Alexis was still suspicious and asked him to go back and undergo the scan again. This surprised him because he had not brought anything that violated the regulations and there was no reason for him to be searched so thoroughly. However, in order to follow the rules and avoid trouble, Malik said nothing, just silently turned back and went through the scanner again. After going through the scanner a second time without any signal, Malik hoped that he could continue his journey. But no, Alexis would not let him go. She continued to ask him to stand still, ordering a more detailed search for an unclear reason. Malik began to feel that something was wrong. While other passengers were still moving through the screening area without any problems, he was stopped again for no apparent reason. A feeling of unease began to creep into Malik's heart. This was not the first time he had experienced a situation like this. As a successful black man, Malik had often felt suspicious looks and invisible discrimination from others. However, he always tried to stay calm and handle the situation professionally. That day, Malik decided to do the same, despite the feeling of dissatisfaction that arose in his heart, as he knew he was being treated unfairly. After a few more checks, nothing was found, but Alexis was not about to let Malik go so easily. She continued to hold him back while other staff processed the next passengers. This only added to Malik's frustration. Other passengers, none of them minorities, were allowed to pass through the screening area without any problems, while he was constantly harassed by Alexis's unreasonable demands. Alexis, with an unfriendly attitude, continued to repeat the screening process in a rigid and unfriendly manner. Malik could not help but feel that he was being deliberately targeted. His frustration grew as he felt the discrimination. No specific reason was given, no evidence to prove that he had violated the rules, but Alexis still tried to make things difficult for him without mercy. Eventually, After a lengthy and unreasonable series of checks, Malik was allowed to continue his journey. He was allowed to board the plane, but he could not shake the feeling that he had been treated unfairly and blatantly discriminated against. Although there was no direct violence or insults, the incident that day left Malik with a bitter sense of the invisible but still strong racism that exists in society, even in places where he thought he was just an ordinary passenger. As Malik boarded the plane, a mixture of relief and frustration haunted him. It wasn't the first time he'd faced such prejudice, but being harassed simply because of the color of his skin at a major international airport made him feel even more burdened. The injustice he experienced that day became part of a larger story, a story of systemic racism and societal bias. So who is Alexis, really? And how can she be so reckless? Alexis Green, 32, is a security officer working at OIR International Airport, one of the busiest transportation hubs in the United States. But with more than 10 years of experience in the industry, Alexis is known for being strict and careful in her work. She always adheres to regulations rigidly, never allows mistakes, and often keeps her distance from colleagues and passengers. Although she is highly regarded for her professionalism, her attitude sometimes makes many people feel uncomfortable. Growing up in a poor suburb of Chicago, Alexis struggled to get out of her difficult circumstances. She worked a variety of jobs before becoming an airport security officer. Her life experiences left her with a cold and unsympathetic exterior. Despite this, she never had a criminal record or any wrongdoing at work. However, some of her coworkers said that her attitude towards people of color was often more rigid, causing an undercurrent of conflict among the staff. To her colleagues and superiors, she was a model of discipline and precision. But few knew that behind that professional and strict exterior was a hidden life that Alexis always hid. According to later accounts, she not only had a rigid attitude towards work, but also had a history of conflicts with many people of color. The arguments with these people seemed to stem not only from work requirements, but also from Alexis' deeply personal prejudices. She had been involved in a secretive, racist group in the Chicago suburbs, where she sought sympathy and shared anti-black views. Alexis was considered an active member of the group, regularly attending secret meetings and propagating hateful propaganda. This involvement explains her behavior and attitudes toward people of color in her daily life and work. Alexis' life is described as a contradiction. During the day, she wears a security uniform and follows all the rules, but at night she is immersed in extremist activities. The underground relationships and racist ideology that Alexis pursues make her a person with two opposite lives. The incident at O'Hare Airport that day, when Alexis deliberately harassed Malik Johnson, a black businessman, was just one of the clearest signs of her extremist ideology. Her actions at work, especially when dealing with people of color, were not just an adherence to principle but also a reflection of the racist ideology she had long harbored. About 2 days after the tense incident at O'Hare Airport, Malik Johnson returned to Chicago as usual, after completing work in New York. On June 15, 2021, just 3 days after her tense confrontation with Malik Johnson, Alexis Green was found dead in the parking lot of O'Hare International Airport. It was a normal morning at the airport, with the usual hustle and bustle of people. However, the atmosphere quickly became tense and uneasy when Alexis' body, with multiple fatal wounds, was found in an abandoned car. She had been brutally attacked. Police quickly cordoned off the area and began an investigation at the scene. The incident occurred in a public place where hundreds of people pass by every day, causing an immediate public uproar. Alexis, an airport security officer, whose life seemed normal, had now become the victim of a shocking murder. The injuries on Alexis' body suggested that this was no ordinary murder. She had been stabbed multiple times, concentrated in vital areas, indicating that the killer had acted out of a vengeful spirit. Immediately, the investigation focused on Alexis' personal and professional relationships. As Alexis Green's case became the focus of attention, Chief Rahul, a white man with many years of experience in the investigative field, set out to clarify her recent relationships and conflicts. Rahul is a man of careful and meticulous investigative methods. One of the most intriguing clues in the case was a confrontation between Alexis and Malik Johnson, a 40-year-old black businessman, just days before Alexis was murdered. According to security guards and several witnesses, Malik had a conflict with Alexis after she had been difficult for him at the security checkpoint at O'Hare Airport. Although there was no violence that day, Malik's tension and displeasure with Alexis were clearly evident, and this quickly caught Rahul's attention. Under pressure to solve the case, Rahul zeroed in on Malik as a prime suspect. He knew that emotional outbursts could be a motive for violent behavior, and given the apparent conflict between Malik and Alexis, many believed that this was a reasonable reason to arrest him. Malik was not only being harassed by Alexis that day, but also may have felt he had been treated unfairly, leading the police to believe that this could have been the reason for the murder. Just hours after Alexis' body was found, Rahul ordered Malik Johnson arrested. The decision was based on reports from that day and suspicions surrounding Malik's actions. However, Rahul's decision was controversial, especially in the black community, with many feeling that Malik had been arrested too hastily without sufficient evidence. Malik, during his arrest, found himself once again caught in the crossfire. He was charged solely for his previous altercation with Alexis, without any physical evidence or witnesses to indicate that he was responsible for her death. The investigation team continues to analyze the evidence at the scene more thoroughly. The focus of the investigation has shifted to examining security cameras at the airport parking lot, where Alexis Green was found dead in her car. This is an important step in clarifying any suspicions and finding the exact clues to the culprit. When the security camera footage was carefully reviewed, police discovered a remarkable detail that completely changed the direction of the investigation. As Alexis got into her car and prepared to leave, a masked man approached her car. He was wearing a thick black coat that covered most of his body and a hat, making identification extremely difficult. He moved quickly, purposefully, and seemed to know exactly where Alexis was. The police caught the moment the man approached Alexis' car door through the camera. He knocked on the window, and Alexis cautiously opened the door, perhaps not realizing the danger that was approaching. As soon as the door opened, the masked man sprang into action. He quickly covered Alexis' mouth with one hand, preventing her from screaming for help, while his other hand clutched the knife and stabbed her multiple times. The footage showed Alexis struggling, but in a matter of seconds, her body collapsed onto the car seat. The attacker then calmly left the scene, leaving Alexis' body in the car in the middle of a crowded parking lot. What shocked police was that the appearance of the attacker in the video did not match Malik Johnson's description. Although his face was covered, his build, height, and gait were completely different from Malik. This was a major turning point in the case. It undermined Malik's initial suspicion and opened up the possibility that the killer could be someone else, with deeper connections to Alexis and her secret life. This CCTV footage has forced Chief Rahul to reconsider his decision. Although Malik had a conflict with Alexis, the CCTV footage has proven that he was not the one who committed the murder. The investigation now needs to focus on the identity of the mysterious masked man. Police later released Malik, forcing them to admit that they had mistakenly focused too early on one suspect without enough concrete evidence. The investigation into Alexis Green's death enters a new phase, focusing on her personal relationships and conflicts. As police continue to dig deeper, a complex picture emerges of Alexis' life, especially the long-standing conflicts she had with many people, especially those in the black community. When police interviewed additional co-workers and passengers who had interacted with Alexis, they found that she had frequent conflicts with people of color, not only at work but also in her personal relationships. Several co-workers also mentioned that Alexis had been the subject of complaints about her discriminatory and implicitly hostile attitudes toward people of color. Although there were few serious incidents that came to light, these disagreements were enough to cause a series of strained relationships. Police also discovered that Alexis' life was much more than just working as an airport security officer. A major breakthrough in the investigation was the discovery of her involvement with an underground racist extremist group. The group, which is known for its hateful actions and propaganda against minorities, especially black people, was not only a member but also appeared to be actively involved in the group's activities. Alexis' alleged links to extremist groups have raised questions for police about the motives and circumstances of her death. Alexis' involvement with the group may have led to her being targeted by people she had offended, or by members of the group themselves. Alexis' involvement with the extremist group not only helped the police explain why she had so many conflicts with people of color, but also opened up new lines of investigation, including the possibility that the murder was related to the secrets she kept in this underground life. This created a turning point in the case, as the police had to investigate the extremist group and its members more deeply, in order to find out who really brutalized Alexis Green. The investigation then led to a significant result. The group was led by Jaden, a white man with extremist ideology and deep hostility towards ethnic minorities. Jaden was the one behind the group's propaganda and organization. After a secret investigation and evidence collection, the police arrested all 9 members of the group, including Jaden. The arrest of the extremist group went smoothly, but the police knew that only with concrete statements could they uncover the full truth behind Alexis Green's death. Each member of the group was questioned in the interrogation room, and the process of confronting each person yielded valuable clues. After hours of interrogation and psychological pressure, information about the true reason behind Alexis' death was finally revealed. Several members of the group testified that Alexis Green, although she had been an active member of the group, had developed internal conflicts. She no longer agreed with the extremist activities of the group and intended to leave the organization. This created a tense situation between her and the other members, especially Jaden. Not only did she want to leave the group, but she also threatened to reveal some dangerous information about the group's secret activities. This was a serious threat to Jaden and his group. Fearing that Alexis would expose the group's identity and covert activities, Jaden decided that she had to be eliminated to protect the organization. After several closed-door meetings, Jaden ordered a member of the group to track and assassinate Alexis. According to testimony, this member was Joseph, the masked man seen in security camera footage, approaching Alexis as she was about to leave the parking lot and brutally killing her. Testimonies from members shed light on the whole truth. Alexis Green was not killed because of personal conflicts with outsiders, but because of conflicts within the extremist group she had belonged to. Her decision to leave the group and the threat of revealing secrets made her a target for Jaden and his associates. Jaden, along with his members, now faces charges of murder and organized crime. December 3, 2021, the trial of Jaden and his accomplices quickly took place, attracting great public attention. At the trial, all the details of Alexis Green's death were clarified, especially the involvement of Jaden and group member Joseph, who directly killed Alexis. Jaden, as the ringleader and mastermind of the plot to assassinate Alexis Green, was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and leading a criminal extremist organization. During his trial, Jaden was found not guilty of his role, as other members of the group testified in detail about the plan, which he actively directed. For premeditated murder, Jaden was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Joseph, who was directly involved in Alexis's murder, confessed to all of his actions at trial. He was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated murder. Joseph claimed that he acted on Jaden's orders, but this did not reduce his guilt. As a direct perpetrator of the murder, Joseph was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, just like Jaden. Other members of the group face a separate trial for participating in a racist extremist organization. They are charged with participating in an illegal organization that incites racial violence and promotes hate speech. Although they were not directly involved in Alexis Green's murder, their involvement in the group has led to serious charges. The Alexis Green case has closed, but its echoes still reverberate, not only in the legal system but in the minds of those who followed the investigation and trial. What is worth pondering after the case is the consequences of hatred, discrimination, and extremist ideologies. The death of Alexis Green, although unfortunate, has exposed the dark corners of a society in which differences in skin color and ethnicity are still the source of many injustices. Story 3. In this story, we will delve into a case that shocked the whole United States in the late 1990s, the brutal murder of a young girl, Heather Rich. A seemingly normal evening turned into a tragedy when 3 teenagers turned harmless fun into a horrific murder. What really happened that fateful night? How did close friends become complicit in such a gruesome case? Let's find out the truth behind this heartbreaking case and what is still hidden. Be sure to get ready, because this story will keep you glued to your screen. From the twists and turns, to the conflicting testimony, to the dark secrets of those involved. The Heather Rich case is not only a story about youthful crime, but also a cautionary tale about the terrible consequences of bad decisions. Heather Rich, born in 1980, is the youngest daughter of the Rich family, living in the small town of Waurika, Oklahoma, in the fall of 1996. Heather, 16 years old, is a sophomore in high school, known not only for her excellent academic performance but also for being a member of the school's outstanding cheerleading squad. With her beautiful appearance and confidence, she always attracts attention wherever she appears. However, like many teenagers of the same age, Heather enters a rebellious phase, curious about life and wanting to explore new things around her. On the fateful evening of October 2nd, 1996, a major argument broke out at the Rich household between Heather and her mother, Gail, over a $300 telephone bill. The money had been accrued by Heather while chatting with friends, and this left Gail extremely worried and angry. The Rich household was going through a difficult financial period as Heather's father, Dwayne, was seriously injured in a transformer explosion while at work. The serious injuries required him to undergo several expensive surgeries and extensive treatment, leaving him unable to continue working. The financial burden fell heavily on Gail, forcing her to take on additional jobs to support the family. With every penny becoming precious, Gail tried to explain to Heather the difficulties the family was facing, as well as stressing the importance of learning how to manage money and become more independent. However, Heather, at the age of rebellion, did not easily accept this advice. Instead of admitting her mistake, she continued to argue with her mother. The argument became tense as both of their emotions ran high, making the atmosphere in the family extremely heavy. After her anger gradually subsided, Heather decided to go to bed. She quietly walked across the living room, wishing her father a good night with a little tenderness, but deliberately ignored her mother. As a way of expressing that she was still angry after the argument, Heather was still upset, and the conflict between mother and daughter had not been resolved. The next morning, October 3rd, Gail woke up as usual and called her children down for breakfast. But this time Heather did not appear. At first, Gail thought that her daughter was still angry and would come down to eat when she was hungry. However, time passed and Heather still did not come out of her room. She began to worry. When she went up to check Heather's room, Gail was startled to realize that her daughter was not in the room and did not leave any trace. The bed was empty and all of Heather's belongings were still intact, but she was gone. Worrying, Gail immediately realized that something unusual was happening to her daughter. At that time, cell phones were not common, so Heather had no means of communication. Anxiety filled the family as Gail and Dwayne began calling all of Heather's friends, hoping to find clues about their daughter's whereabouts. But no one knew where Heather was. This made the family even more worried because Heather had never had any mental problems or run away from home before. In addition, the girl had always paid great attention to her appearance and never went out without clothes or makeup. But all of her belongings were still intact at home. Not wanting to waste any more time, Gail and Dwayne rushed to the Waurika Sheriff's Office to report their daughter missing. There, Gail recounted the previous day's argument with Heather, in which she berated her daughter for her high phone bill and her stubborn refusal to admit fault. Both husband and wife felt that Heather had recently become too engrossed in her conversations with friends and had lost control of her behavior. Although Dwayne was calmer, he still sided with his wife in raising their daughter. The sheriff tried to reassure the couple that Heather might just run away for a short time, like many teenagers do, especially after a fight with their parents. But Gail and Dwayne knew that this was not like Heather. She usually faced her problems and worked through them, rather than running away from them. Unfortunately, this time the tension between mother and daughter led to a situation that neither of them expected. Despite their concerns, police officers insisted that most similar cases resolve themselves after a short period of time, when the teenager returns home after cooling off. By law, A person must be missing for at least 24 hours without any contact before they can be officially declared missing. So the police could not immediately take the report and asked Gail and her husband to go home and wait for more information. Frustrated by the police response, Gail and Dwayne sensed that something serious had happened to Heather. Unable to sit idly by, they decided to start searching for her themselves. They contacted Heather's close friends, including 17-year-old Randy Wood, the school's soccer captain, and her ex-boyfriend. Although their relationship had ended, Randy and Heather remained friends. It was with Randy that Heather racked up a recent large phone bill, leading Gail to suspect that Randy might know something about her daughter's whereabouts. When Gail called Randy, he claimed to know nothing about Heather's disappearance or what might have happened. Although Randy's words sounded convincing, Gail's intuition told her that he was hiding something. Randy's answers were too formulaic, as if he was repeating a prepared story. Furthermore, Randy's attitude did not show any concern about his ex-girlfriend's disappearance, which made Gail even more suspicious. However, Randy did not show any obvious signs of lying, so Gail decided to continue contacting someone else. The next person Gail called was Josh Bagwell, another 17-year-old high school student whom Heather had just started dating. When she called Josh's house, it was his grandmother who answered the phone and said that Josh was resting after a party last night and she didn't want to wake him up. The grandmother refused to talk to Josh, admitting that she was cleaning up the trailer in the yard where the students had partied the night before. When Gail asked about Heather, the grandmother insisted that she had not seen her at the party. With no useful information from Heather's two friends, Gail and Dwayne's worries grew. Desperate, they decided to drive around the county, hoping to find any clues that might help locate their daughter. A day passed, but all efforts were fruitless. Worried and exhausted, Gail and Dwayne returned to the police station, requesting the assistance of the authorities. This time, the police finally joined the official search. Still, a week passed without any valuable information about Heather. As time passed, the hope of finding her alive became more and more slim for the Rich family. On October 10, 1996, about a week after the incident, while patrolling a suburban area near the Texas border, police discovered a body floating in the river, face down and half submerged in mud. People passing by the bridge noticed that the body appeared to be covered in a thick layer of mud, as if someone had deliberately hidden it. When divers pulled the body to shore, they were confronted with a much more horrifying sight. The victim's body was severely disfigured, with multiple gunshot wounds at close range, possibly from a handgun. The victim's face was so badly damaged that it was unrecognizable at the scene. During the investigation, Sheriff Bob Colbert and forensic experts determined that the victim had been shot 9 times at close range, once in the back of the head and 8 times in the back. The body was badly damaged, almost completely torn apart. Since only one girl had been reported missing in the area, Heather Rich's parents were called in to identify the body. Despite the severe disfigurement, they were only able to identify their daughter by the name ring Heather always wore, a gift from her mother. Heather's identity was eventually confirmed through dental records, where experts discovered the fixed braces she had worn to correct her bite. News of the young woman's death quickly spread throughout the town, becoming the headline news the following day. Within hours, most of the local population knew about the tragedy. Randy Wood, the captain of the football team and Heather's ex-boyfriend, was also shocked to hear of her death. The incident happened on the day of the annual game, where Randy had been named king of the game for many consecutive seasons. Usually after such games there would be big celebrations, but this time no one was in the mood to celebrate. Haunted by Heather's death, Randy went to the bridge where her body was found and stood staring into the murky water for a long time, keeping a terrible secret in his heart. As the investigation into Heather Rich's disappearance began, police questioned her parents. In an effort to find out what had happened to her daughter, Gail, using her motherly instincts, contacted many of Heather's friends and acquaintances. Through these conversations, she became particularly suspicious of 2 people, 17-year-old Randy Wood, Heather's ex-boyfriend, and Josh Bagwell, her current boyfriend. What made Gail suspicious was that Josh, who had just returned from a party, had not even contacted Heather's family to inquire about her disappearance. Both men, in Gail's opinion, seemed to be hiding something. Randy and Josh answered her questions with suspiciously similar details, as if they were repeating the same prepared story. Even their phrasing was very similar, and when the police asked additional questions, neither could give a clear answer. This made the investigators in Gail even more suspicious. More notably, while many of Heather's other friends were concerned and actively involved in the search for her, Randy and Josh avoided contact and appeared nervous, further cementing the police's suspicions. Gail had a hunch that both teens knew more than they were admitting. As police continued to talk to Heather's classmates and other witnesses, they began to gather some important clues that suggested Randy and Josh may have been involved in the events of the fateful night when Heather ran away from home after an argument with her mother. These clues placed Randy and Josh at the center of the investigation into Heather's tragic death. The truth gradually emerged. Heather had planned to secretly attend a party to meet her boyfriend Josh Bagwell, despite her parents' ban on going out at night. On the night of October 2nd, 1996, the night of the murder, while the family was asleep, Heather waited for the right moment to carry out her plan. Waiting until about 11 p.m., she quietly jumped out of her bedroom window, sneaking out without making a sound. Outside, two young men, Josh and Randy Wood, both well-known figures in town and well-liked by many people, were waiting. Josh Bagwell, Heather's current boyfriend, is the son of a wealthy family. He always shows off his wealth through luxury cars and expensive clothes. Josh is a typical example of golden youth, only interested in fame and money. People see Josh as a confident young man who has everything in hand. In contrast, Randy Wood, Heather's ex-boyfriend, comes from a more modest background. Randy comes from a middle-class family, but thanks to his outstanding athletic talent and perseverance, he has achieved a reputation no less than his rich friend. Randy is the captain of the school's football team and is admired by his friends for his excellent performances on the field. With his excellent skills, he not only became the best football player in the school but also became famous throughout the state. Josh and Randy had a close relationship and were often seen together. They were inseparable and often spent weekends driving around town, especially on deserted dirt roads. The two also frequently threw small parties where they drank alcohol and sometimes smoked marijuana. Due to the lack of recreational activities for teenagers in town, their group often had to come up with their own spontaneous fun, and Heather often joined in. A friend of Heather's even revealed that she had tried drinking with Josh and Randy's group in the past. With initial suspicions, the detectives and sheriff decided to question Josh and Randy, two men believed to be involved in the night of Heather's disappearance. Randy admitted that the two had been in a trailer behind Josh's house that night, playing dominoes and drinking all evening. However, both Josh and Randy denied ever seeing Heather. What caught the detectives' attention was that both young men told the same story with suspiciously similar details. As if they had memorized their statements, both responded mechanically and without emotion, despite the fact that this was an investigation into the death of a friend. This led the police to believe that they were hiding the truth and may have planned their stories in advance. Detectives began to suspect that the murder may have stemmed from jealousy, as the young men could not share Heather. The complicated relationship between Josh, her current boyfriend, and Randy, her ex-boyfriend, may have led to hidden conflicts, and Heather became the victim in this dispute. Although investigators did not have enough direct evidence to charge Josh and Randy at the time, their strange behavior and lack of emotion added to their suspicions. They quickly became prime suspects in the case. To solve the case, police began digging deeper into their histories, their relationship with Heather, as well as the circumstances of the party Heather attended on her last night alive. By now, you must be feeling confused and disorganized with the complex details of this case, right? Don't worry. Pause the video, drink a glass of warm water, and recharge your energy before continuing with us on our journey to discover the truth. Oh, and don't forget to support us by clicking the like button. Thank you very much. Now let's continue to delve into the next shocking details of the case. A crucial clue from the autopsy results. First, Heather Rich's body showed that she had been shot a total of 9 times. This caught the detectives' attention, as shotguns typically only held 8 rounds in a magazine. The question was, why would the killer reload to fire another shot when the victim was almost certainly dead from the first shots? This obsession revealed something strange about the killer's behavior, showing ruthlessness and a determination to kill with absolute certainty. Another important detail discovered was the type of bullet used by the killer, a double buckshot, an extremely powerful bullet with great lethality. In fact, this type of bullet is often used in hunting big game, and is completely beyond the level needed to kill a 16-year-old girl like Heather. The choice of this type of bullet raised a big question mark about the killer's motive, but at the same time it also helped the police make an important breakthrough in the investigation. The rare ammunition quickly led detectives to a crucial clue. Double buckshot bullets were uncommon and were sold at only one store in the city. When police checked the store's receipts, they discovered that only one person had purchased the bullets just before the murders. The salesman, interviewed by police and reviewed photos, immediately identified the buyer as Josh Bagwell, a 17-year-old high school student who police had already suspected. Josh did not buy the ammunition alone. According to the store clerk, he was accompanied by another young man, not Randy Wood, as the police had suspected, but upon further investigation, Curtis Gamble. This was a remarkable discovery because Curtis, at 19, was the oldest of the group and had a troubled past with the law. Curtis Gamble had a criminal history, despite his young age. He had been arrested multiple times and had spent much of his time in juvenile detention centers. Curtis was known to be a troublemaker in the local community, frequently driving drunk and engaging in violent behavior, including shooting dogs, horses, and even innocent passers-by. These aggressive actions had long brought him to the attention of authorities, and now Curtis was the prime suspect in the Heather Rich case. Although both Randy Wood and Josh Bagwell had suspicious behavior, neither had a criminal record, while Curtis had a history of serious crimes. It was Curtis' presence at the store with Josh to purchase the double buckshot that made him the prime suspect in the investigation. These discoveries helped the police gradually unravel the mystery of the case and move the investigation forward in a significant way. On October 23rd, police searched Curtis Gamble's home in a nearby town, just a few miles from the bridge where Heather Rich's body was found. Although officers did not find Curtis at home, they spoke with his grandmother, who said Curtis had been fishing at the bridge since he was a child, leading police to realize that Curtis had a stronger connection to the crime scene than they had initially suspected. The next day, October 24th, Curtis was arrested by detectives and taken to the police station for questioning. The interrogation lasted more than 8 hours, during which Curtis remained largely silent, although he agreed to take a polygraph test. However, one important detail that Curtis admitted was that he owned a rare Mossberg gun, which featured a 9-round magazine matching the number of shots fired at Heather Rich. Ballistics experts later performed a ballistics test and confirmed that Curtis' gun was the weapon used in the crime. When confronted with compelling evidence, Curtis admitted his role and said he had recruited Randy Wood and Josh Bagwell into the scheme. He wrote a detailed 2-page confession describing the entire incident. Finally, 3 weeks after Heather's tragic death, police got a confession from Curtis marking a major turning point in the investigation. Randy and Josh were quickly arrested. In his testimony, Curtis claimed that he was the mastermind behind the entire murder, but insisted that Randy actually pulled the trigger while Josh merely stood by and watched. However, the police remained skeptical of this account. Randy, the captain of the school's football team, was an excellent student and had never been in trouble with the law before. He was also highly regarded by his peers for his character, and Randy did not fit the stereotype of a murderer. The case was complicated by geography. The party took place in Oklahoma, but Heather's body was found in Texas, where the death penalty is a possible crime. This created a major problem for the investigation because under Texas law, the real killer in the case could face the death penalty. As a result, no suspect wanted to admit to a major role in the murder. After repeated questioning and attempts at persuasion by the police, Randy finally agreed to cooperate and began giving a statement. However, he completely denied that he had directly carried out the murder, claiming that Curtis was the one who fired the shots and initiated the entire incident while Josh was simply present at the scene. For his part, Josh refused to cooperate with the authorities. This led to a situation in October 1996 where investigators were faced with 2 accounts that contradicted many details. Ultimately, the police were more inclined to trust Randy's testimony, especially after he successfully passed a polygraph test. Although it was still a challenge to determine the exact sequence of events on the night of October 2nd, the police decided to rely on the information Randy provided. According to his testimony, Randy, Curtis, and Josh had planned to get together for drinks that night. Josh's girlfriend, Heather, also planned to attend the party even though she had never met Curtis before and had no idea that he was an extremely dangerous person. To better understand the lie detector, we will briefly explain as follows. In the 1990s. The lie detector, also known as the polygraph, was widely used in criminal investigations to support the interrogation of suspects. The polygraph works on the principle of measuring the body's physiological responses such as heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, and skin conductivity due to sweating as the person being interrogated answers questions. Abnormal changes in these indicators can indicate stress or anxiety, thereby helping investigators determine whether the person is lying or not. According to the story, when the group gathered, they began to drink freely. Heather, like everyone else, gradually fell into a state of drunkenness and lost control. In his drunken state, Curtis began to have dark thoughts and had the intention to attack and violate Heather's body. When he did, Curtis undressed her and then committed a depraved act right in front of Randy and Josh. Heather woke up, panicked, screamed, and tried to fight back. However, due to her drunken state, she quickly became tired and unconscious. Curtis then continued his depraved behavior after finishing the job because, worried that, even though Heather was drunk, she could still remember the incident and report his wrongdoing, Curtis decided to kill her to cover up the evidence. At first, Randy and Josh thought Curtis was joking, but soon realized he was serious when he pulled a gun from the trunk of his car and pointed it at the group. Sensing Curtis' danger and erratic behavior, Randy and Josh decided not to fight back. They reluctantly helped Curtis put Heather in Josh's trunk and drove to Curtis' house. On the way, as they neared the house, Curtis ordered them to stop at the bridge, the very place where Heather's body was later discovered. Under pressure from Curtis, Randy and Josh had to pull Heather out of the hold and place her near the railing. Fearing for their lives, they followed the instructions without protest. As Heather lay defiant on the ground, Curtis advanced and opened fire on her without hesitation. Randy witnessed the horrific scene with his own eyes as the bullet shattered Heather's skull. Unable to bear the violence, Randy covered his face with his hands, trembling, unable to look any further. Curtis continued to fire more shots into Heather until the gun's magazine was empty. Then he and his accomplices threw Heather's body into the river. Once the deed was done, the three quickly left the scene. Knowing Curtis' ruthlessness, they decided to keep the matter a secret, fearing the same fate if they dared to reveal the truth. The trial, which took place in February 1998, attracted such public attention that the court was forced to limit attendance. The defense team attempted to mitigate their client's guilt by attacking her reputation. They painted a false picture of Heather, portraying her as a wild girl who took advantage of the situation to force Curtis to kill her in self-defense. However, Heather's family, especially her parents, stood firm in their defense, asserting that their daughter was a hardworking, kind person who had unfortunately been dragged into a tragic situation by bad people. During the trial, Curtis made a dramatic change of heart, claiming that Josh had no part in the murder and had no knowledge of the plan. He claimed that Randy was the one who actually pulled the trigger. This new testimony created a pivotal moment. Forcing Randy to make a bold decision, he rejected the plea deal he had previously reached to prove his innocence. Randy claimed that he wanted to not only defend himself but also seek justice for Heather, who had been wrongly murdered. Randy's decision surprised many in the courtroom, including Heather's parents. They met with Randy privately after the trial and expressed their respect for his brave decision. On February 10th, Randy took the stand and gave full details of that fateful night, describing the roles Josh and Curtis played in Heather's murder. Ultimately, Curtis Gamble was sentenced to life in prison with an additional 99 years. In August 1998, Randy Wood was also sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. However, many felt that the sentence was too harsh for Randy, who had shown remorse and had courageously come forward. Josh Bagwell was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole and was imprisoned with Curtis. In January 2002, both Curtis and Josh made a daring escape from prison, but were recaptured after 10 days on the run and returned to prison. The Heather Rich case is a haunting tragedy, not only because of the brutality the victim endured, but also because of the poor choices of young people that led to such a tragic and irreversible end. Curtis Gamble, Randy Wood, and Josh Bagwell, 3 teenagers with their lives ahead of them, drove themselves into darkness through selfishness, fear, and impulsive behavior. Heather, a young woman full of promise, fell victim to the violence and cruelty of those she once trusted. Through this story, we not only see the terrible consequences of uncontrolled actions, but also realize the fragility of life when moral values are forgotten. Greed, fear, and ego can easily lead people down a path of sin with no way out. The Heather Rich case teaches us that split-second decisions can determine our future. It also reminds us of the responsibility of each individual, family, and society to protect and educate children so that they do not fall into the cycle of violence and crime. Story 4. In the summer of 2001, in an upscale neighborhood in suburban Miami, Florida, Ethan Turner, a 9-year-old boy, was pushed into a swimming pool by his babysitter and left to die. The babysitter, Harper Evans, 24, was charged with involuntary manslaughter after admitting that she pushed Ethan into the pool in anger because the boy was disobedient. After pushing the boy into the water, Harper did not help him and instead left Ethan to struggle until he drowned. Jackson and Avery Turner first met in 1989 at a major real estate event in New York. At the time, both were ambitious professionals in the industry. Jackson, a young entrepreneur, had started his career investing in real estate projects, while Avery was a real estate broker known for his excellent negotiating skills. Initially, their relationship was purely professional, with Jackson hiring Avery as a brokerage partner for several projects he was pursuing. As they worked together, Jackson and Avery quickly discovered that they had a lot in common. They were both passionate about real estate, shared the dream of building their own empire, and had the ability to see great potential in projects that others might overlook. In addition, both had an adventurous spirit and were always willing to try out bold projects. These traits brought them closer, not only in their work but also in their personal lives. A major turning point came when they were involved in a large real estate project in Miami in the late 1990s. This project required both of them to work closely together for months, meeting frequently and exchanging ideas. It was during this time that they realized that their connection was more than just work. Their mutual understanding, along with their growing feelings for each other, led them to decide to start a relationship. After nearly 2 years of dating, in the spring of 1992, Jackson proposed to Avery during a vacation in Florida. It was a memorable moment for both of them. As they stood by the beach with the romantic sunset, Jackson knelt down and presented Avery with the diamond ring he had prepared for a long time. Avery was moved and immediately accepted the proposal. Their wedding took place a few months later, with the participation of family, friends, and colleagues in the real estate industry. The wedding was held at a luxury resort on the Miami beach, where the two had memorable memories during their time working together. Jackson and Avery Turner's married life was very happy. They were not only husband and wife, but also effective partners in work. After marriage, both worked together to expand their real estate projects. With the perfect combination of Jackson's investing ability and Avery's negotiation and brokerage skills, they quickly became one of the power couples in Miami real estate. After marrying in 1992, Jackson and Avery Turner quickly began to focus on developing their real estate careers. Both had big ambitions and a desire to build a strong business empire. In the early years, they worked on many successful projects together and quickly became well-known names in the real estate investment world. However, despite their busy work schedules, Jackson and Avery always tried to balance their lives to spend time together. In 1993, their happiness doubled when their first son, Ethan Turner, was born. Ethan is Jackson and Avery's pride and greatest love. Both of them wanted to give their son the best, not only in terms of material things but also in raising and creating conditions for him to develop comprehensively. Ever since Ethan was a child, Jackson and Avery focused on educating and taking care of him carefully. They always had happy moments together, such as playing in the park, traveling, or organizing family picnics. However, life began to become more complicated as Ethan grew older. By the time Ethan was 9, Jackson and Avery's careers were in full swing. Large real estate projects began to demand more of their time and attention. They were often away from home to attend meetings with partners, inspect construction sites, or even go on extended business trips. Despite their best efforts to avoid neglecting Ethan, they found that spending enough time with him was becoming more difficult. In this context, Jackson and Avery began to consider hiring a babysitter to help care for Ethan when they were not home. They wanted someone who was experienced, trustworthy, and could care for Ethan with love and dedication. Through extensive research and consultation with friends, co-workers, and neighbors, Jackson and Avery were introduced to Harper Evans, a 24-year-old with several years of experience as a babysitter. Harper was described as caring, dedicated, and a lover of children. She had worked for several families in the Miami area and had always received rave reviews from previous homeowners. So Jackson and Avery felt comfortable inviting Harper to meet for an interview. The meeting took place on a summer afternoon in 2001. Harper appeared confident and professional and made a good impression right from the start. She shared her experience in childcare and expressed her love for interacting with young children. Harper also quickly developed a rapport with Ethan as she chatted and played with him. Ethan seemed to like Harper, and Jackson and Avery felt that this was the right choice. Harper officially began babysitting for the Turners in June 2001. At first, things went smoothly. Harper took Ethan out frequently, organizing educational and fun activities to stimulate his creativity. Harper also kept Jackson and Avery informed of Ethan's daily activities, giving them peace of mind while they were busy with work. Ethan also seemed happy and comfortable around Harper. Although Harper Evans had many years of experience working with children and had received many compliments from the family she had worked with, working at the Turner family became a difficult challenge for her. Ethan Turner, a 9-year-old boy, is an active and energetic child. He has a hyperactive personality, loves to explore and challenge himself, which often leads to what Harper considers disobedience. Harper, despite her experience, lacks patience with a child as strong-willed as Ethan. She gradually feels pressured by her work and often loses control of her emotions when Ethan does not follow instructions. At first, Harper was professional and dedicated when working for the Turner family. She often organized outdoor and educational activities for Ethan, helping him develop both physically and mentally. However, Ethan's dynamism and hyperactivity gradually tired Harper. He often refused to sit still or follow the rules she set, and sometimes even acted stubborn when reminded. Small arguments and conflicts began to appear between Harper and Ethan. Although these conflicts were not serious at first, they gradually accumulated and affected Harper's psychology. Harper, who was naturally hot-tempered and easily agitated, was not good at controlling her emotions when faced with Ethan's lack of cooperation. Every time Ethan disobeyed her instructions, Harper felt like she was losing control of the situation, something she had never experienced before with other families. She began to see Ethan as a burden rather than a child who needed care and love. This mentality caused Harper to become increasingly harsh with the boy. However, as time went on, Jackson and Avery noticed some small changes in the way Harper cared for Ethan. Harper began to show less interest in him, and their playtime activities became less and less. Instead of spending time playing with Ethan, Harper often left him to entertain himself by watching TV or playing alone in his room. She also became more indifferent in reporting details of Ethan's daily activities to Jackson and Avery. Although she felt a little dissatisfied, because of her busy work, Jackson and Avery could not immediately find out more about this situation. In the summer of 2001, Jackson and Avery Turner were busier with work and often had to travel for work. Harper took almost full responsibility for Ethan's care. The longer she spent with Ethan, the more obvious the conflicts between the two became. Harper, who had previously maintained a patient and professional demeanor, now seemed to have lost her temper with Ethan's stubbornness and mischief. She often showed signs of irritation and did not hesitate to scold the boy when things did not go as planned. One hot summer day, the fateful day happened. That day, Harper took Ethan to the community pool for some fun as part of her daily entertainment plan. Ethan had always loved being in the water and had taken a few swimming lessons, but had not yet mastered the skill. Harper had warned Ethan several times not to run around the pool and to follow the safety rules. However, as usual, Ethan was stubborn and disobedient. He continued to jump into the pool, ignoring Harper's warnings. Harper felt anger starting to rise inside her. She was exhausted after a long day of caring for Ethan, and his disobedience made Harper feel disrespected and out of control. In a moment of anger, Harper walked up to Ethan as he stood at the edge of the pool and, without thinking twice, pushed him into the water. She didn't check to see if Ethan was in a safe position or if he knew how to swim well enough to save himself. After pushing Ethan into the pool, Harper stood there for a moment. The boy thrashed in the water, trying to get back up, but he was clearly unable to get out of the situation on his own. In that moment, Harper could have jumped in to save him, but her frustration and exhaustion clouded her judgment. Instead of helping, Harper decided to leave Ethan alone. She turned and walked to the poolside chair and sat down, leaving the boy floundering in the deep water. Ethan, despite his best efforts, was unable to swim to his own rescue. He struggled for a while, then gradually lost his strength. Ethan's weak screams failed to attract Harper's attention, and the boy sank beneath the blue water. Harper, still sitting there, tried to convince himself that everything would be okay, that Ethan would float and get out of this situation on his own. But that was not the case. Ethan, who was not a good swimmer, quickly sank into the water, struggling helplessly as Harper pushed him into the pool. With each passing second, his breathing became more and more shallow as water entered his lungs. Although Ethan tried his best to rise to the surface, his limited swimming skills and panic made him unable to save himself. His body slowly sank to the bottom of the lake, showing no signs of life. Harper, meanwhile, instead of jumping into the lake to save Ethan or calling for help, chose to ignore the serious situation before her. As the boy slowly sank into the lake, she turned around and left the pool area, leaving the child in a dangerous situation without any help. Harper returned to the Turner's house, as if nothing had happened. She entered the house and sat on the sofa, scrolling through her phone and trying to stay calm. Fear began to build in her mind, but Harper told herself that if she kept quiet, no one would know about her actions. She decided not to call Jackson or Avery, Ethan's parents, for fear that the incident would be discovered. Rather than face the consequences, Harper chose to stay quiet and avoid them. For several hours after the incident, the pool was deserted, and no one noticed Ethan's disappearance. Meanwhile, Harper tried to go about her daily life in the Turner house, occasionally glancing at the clock and thinking about what would happen next. With each passing minute, the psychological pressure increased, but she still refused to admit her mistake. Several hours later, as the sun began to fade, a few neighbors passed by the pool area. They noticed something was wrong when Ethan did not appear as usual. These people knew the Turner family and knew that Ethan often played in the pool area under Harper's supervision. However, that day they did not see the boy anywhere. A feeling of anxiety gradually spread as they decided to go closer to check. When they got closer to the edge of the pool, they saw a horrifying scene. Ethan's body lay motionless at the bottom of the pool. At first, they could not believe their eyes, but the truth was too obvious. Immediately, a neighbor called emergency services. Their trembling voices conveyed the panic as they told of their gruesome discovery. The news quickly shook the neighborhood, and people rushed to the pool area to see what had happened. Emergency crews arrived on the scene within minutes of the call. But by the time they pulled Ethan's body from the pool, all hope was lost. The boy had long since stopped breathing, and all attempts to revive him were fruitless. Tears and grief filled the area as people around realized that a young life had been taken so cruelly. At the same time, Harper, who was sitting in her house, heard a commotion outside. She left the living room, went to the window, and looked out at the pool area. In the distance, she could see the emergency team and a group of people gathered around the pool. Harper tried to stay calm, even though she knew what was happening. Fear was running high, but Harper decided not to leave her house or approach the crowd. She continued to avoid it, hoping that it would not be traced back to her. When the emergency crew confirmed Ethan's death, there was no stopping the sense of loss that swept through the community. Several neighbors began calling Jackson and Avery to inform them of the situation. Jackson and Avery, when they received the call, could not believe their ears. They immediately returned from their business trip, trying to grasp everything, but feeling of panic and pain completely overwhelmed them. During this time, the police arrived at the scene to take over the case. They collected statements from the neighbors and tried to reconstruct the events of the day. A tense atmosphere filled the air as the biggest question was posed. How could Ethan drown in an area where he had played safely many times before Jackson and Avery rushed home and were immediately faced with the horrific reality? When they arrived at the scene, the sight of their son's body under a white sheet left them devastated. Feelings of grief and guilt overwhelmed them as they blamed themselves for not being there to protect Ethan. Avery broke down in tears, while Jackson, in great pain, held his wife and stood still in the face of such a great loss. While Ethan's parents were in great pain, Harper remained silent in their home. She felt more panicked than ever, but could not admit to her actions. She tried to hide the truth, justifying it as an unfortunate accident. However, Harper knew in his heart that he had made a grave mistake that he could never fix. As the police continued their thorough investigation into Ethan Turner's death, they began interviewing neighbors around the pool area on the day of the incident. Several witnesses saw Harper Evans and Ethan near the pool, and no one else was there at the time of the boys' accident. From initial statements and evidence gathered, police quickly realized that Harper was the only person who could be responsible for Ethan falling into the lake. Initially, Harper tried to deny responsibility. She told police that Ethan had jumped into the lake on his own while she was not looking, and that the incident was an unfortunate accident. However, as the investigation continued and the evidence began to mount against her, Harper could no longer stick to her story. Inconsistencies in her story became apparent, and psychological pressure from the police forced Harper to confess to part of the truth. During a tense interrogation, Harper admitted that she had pushed Ethan into the lake in a fit of rage. She said Ethan had disobeyed her and, in a moment of insanity, she acted impulsively. Harper argued that she had no intention of killing Ethan, and that she had only wanted to scare him a little so he would be more obedient. However, when she saw Ethan sinking into the water and unable to free himself, Harper panicked and did not know what to do. Instead of trying to save the boy or call for help, she chose to leave him and leave the scene. This confession led to Harper being immediately arrested by police on serious charges. She was charged with manslaughter and neglect resulting in the death of a child. The incident not only shocked the community but also devastated the Turner family. Jackson and Avery Turner, who had always trusted Harper and entrusted their son to her care, could not accept that the babysitter they had once thought trustworthy could act in such a cruel and heartless manner. When they received the news that Harper had admitted to pushing Ethan into the lake, Jackson and Avery felt like their world had collapsed. The pain of losing their son was already unbearable, and now they knew that Ethan had not died from an accident, but from the actions of someone they had trusted. Avery cried uncontrollably, knowing that Ethan had suffered in his final moments of life, scared and alone, with no one there to help him. Jackson, though trying to keep his spirits up, had a look of deep anger and regret in his eyes. The Turner family was not only dealing with personal pain, but also with the attention of the media and the community. Harper's case became big news, attracting the attention of many people. Newspapers and media outlets continuously reported on the pool incident, and many people began to discuss the responsibility of babysitters and the safety of children in similar situations. Every time they saw the news or heard people talking about Ethan's death, Jackson and Avery felt like their wounds were being reopened. In the days that followed, Jackson and Avery decided to distance themselves from the media and public. They focused on organizing Ethan's funeral, hoping to create the most peaceful and complete ceremony to say goodbye to their son. Ethan's funeral was a quiet and mournful affair. Many friends, family, and neighbors attended to share the Turner family's grief. All eyes were on Jackson and Avery, the parents who had lost their only child in such tragic circumstances. After the funeral, Jackson and Avery decided that they needed some time alone to heal. They stopped working and spent time together, trying to find balance after losing Ethan. However, the emptiness of their son still haunted them. Every time they entered Ethan's room, saw his toys or the pictures Ethan had drawn, their hearts ached. Meanwhile, Harper was detained while awaiting trial. News of her arrest spread, and people were outraged by her actions. Harper faced criticism and contempt from the community, not only for Ethan's death, but also for the irresponsibility and indifference she showed after pushing the boy into the lake. Not only did she destroy a family, she also lost the community's trust in the safety of her children by leaving them in the care of others. During this time, Harper often fell into depression and feared for her future. She knew she faced a harsh sentence and might never regain the freedom she once had. However, what worried Harper most was the guilt she felt for Ethan's death. Every night, she couldn't sleep well as the image of the innocent boy kept appearing in her mind, reminding her of the consequences of her actions. Harper Evans was brought to trial in late 2001. Harper was charged with aggravated manslaughter for leaving Ethan in a dangerous situation. At trial, Harper's defense attorneys attempted to argue that she had acted in a fit of rage and had no idea of the serious consequences. They insisted that Harper had no intention of killing Ethan and that it was a terrible mistake made in a moment of lost control. However, the prosecutors argued strongly, stating that while Harper did not intend to kill, leaving a child struggling in the water was inhumane. The prosecutors stressed that a child care provider must always put the child's safety and well-being first, and Harper's indifference was unacceptable under any circumstances. Ultimately, Harper Evans was sentenced to 15 years in prison for manslaughter and neglect resulting in death. This sentence not only brought justice to the Turner family, but also brought attention to the issue of responsibility and ethics for child care providers. The case has left a deep and lasting wound for the Turner family and sparked debate about the ethical standards required in the care and protection of children. Story 5. In Toronto, Canada's largest city, a massive search operation was set into motion. On March 23, 2019, Mrs. Zhang, who was in Hainan, China at the time, received an unexpected international phone call. The voice on the other end spoke in halting English, barely audible, leaving her utterly confused. Just as she was about to hang up, the caller suddenly uttered the name of her youngest son, Wanjin Liu, in heavily accented Mandarin. Though she couldn't make sense of what the caller was saying, the mere mention of her son's name sent a chill through Mrs. Zhang's heart. A wave of dread washed over her. Was Wanjin's phone lost? Or had he fallen ill? Desperate for answers, she tried to question the caller, but the language barrier frustrated them, and they abruptly hung up, leaving Mrs. Zhang in a state of panic, her mind ablaze with worry. She frantically dialed her son's number, but no one picked up. Moments later, another call came through. This time, it was a man speaking Mandarin, claiming to be a classmate of Wanjin's in Toronto. His words struck like a thunderbolt. Wanjin had been kidnapped, his whereabouts unknown, his life hanging in the balance. Mrs. Zhang broke down in tears, her hands trembling as she called her husband, Mr. Liu, to relay the horrifying news. But Mr. Liu's initial reaction was one of skepticism. He dismissed it as a scam, a sophisticated new ploy designed to exploit desperate parents. Behind this chilling ordeal lies a tale of overnight riches, as fantastical as a page from 1001 Nights. It begs the question, is this a story of human depravity, a collapse of morality, or some kind of dark sorcery spun by a shadowy mastermind? Mr. Liu reasoned calmly. These scammers use every trick in the book to make sure our son can't answer his phone, creating the illusion that he's gone missing. Then they pose as kidnappers, demanding a ransom, preying on the information gap between us. Once you transfer the money, they vanish into thin air, and our son reappears, clueless about the whole ordeal. His logic was undeniably sound. For years earlier, when phone scams were less rampant, Mr. Liu had already been vigilant about fraud. His words gave Mrs. Zhang pause, though doubt lingered. To be certain, she called the management office of her son's apartment building in Toronto, asking if anyone had seen him return from school. After verifying Mrs. Zhang's identity, the building manager went to check the underground parking garage. He found all 4 of Wang Jin's luxury cars neatly parked, doors locked, everything in order. Hearing this, Mr. Lu grew even more convinced. "See, it's obviously a scam," he said. "If those so-called kidnappers call back, tell them to do whatever they want with the hostage. We've got 2 sons after all." But a few hours later, his confidence would crumble. During a routine shift change, the building security team reviewed the surveillance footage as protocol. What they saw was chilling. Around 3 p.m., Wang Jinlu, arm in arm with a stunning statuesque woman, descended into the parking garage. The pair climbed into his Land Rover, preparing to leave. Suddenly, a van, noted. The narrator's mention of a van here seems inconsistent with later details. It may be a misidentification of the vehicle type. Screeched to a halt directly in front of the Land Rover, blocking their path. 3 masked men leapt out. Through the Land Rover's windshield, they appeared to exchange a few words with Wang Jin. Moments later, Wang Jin stepped out of the vehicle and approached them. Without warning, 2 of the men grabbed him by the arms while the third pulled out what looked like a stun gun, repeatedly zapping Wang Jin until he collapsed, limp and unconscious. The trio dragged Wang Jin into their vehicle, likely an SUV, not a van as initially stated, and sped off into the shadows. The young woman, who had witnessed the entire ordeal from the Land Rover, sat frozen for several minutes before stumbling out, trembling. She didn't even pause to slip on her high heels, carrying them as she staggered away in a panic. The security officer who reviewed the footage was stunned. A mere moment of distraction, perhaps a quick bathroom break, had allowed this horrific scene to unfold. He immediately called the police. After verifying the authenticity of the video, the Toronto police issued an urgent alert, mobilizing resources to rescue Wang Jinlu. They also dispatched Mandarin-speaking officers to contact his parents in China. But Mr. Lu's first reaction to the police call was disbelief. "Good Lord, you scammers have the audacity to impersonate the police now?" He unleashed a tirade, berating the officer on the line. The police were bewildered. What's going on here? Don't they want their son back? No matter how they explained the situation, Mr. Lu remained unconvinced that his son had truly been kidnapped. Left with no other option, the police contacted the Chinese consulate in Toronto for assistance. But their involvement only deepened Mr. Lu's skepticism. "Oh, brilliant, now we've got fake consulate officials too? Let's see how many more tricks you've got up your sleeves. I'm telling you, even if the Prime Minister of Canada calls me today, you won't get a single cent." In today's world, Mr. Lu could easily be hailed as a model of anti-scam vigilance. His defiance left the Toronto Police Department baffled. Could it be that the parents themselves orchestrated their son's kidnapping? Nevertheless, the police held a press conference, releasing the surveillance footage of the abduction and appealing to the public for any leads on Wang Jinlu's whereabouts or the identities of the 3 masked kidnappers. Across the ocean, Wang Jin's parents were finally confronted with undeniable evidence. The irrefutable video left them reeling, as if the sky itself were collapsing. They booked the earliest flight to Toronto, reaching out desperately to the Chinese embassy, local Chinese community leaders, and the Chinese Business Association, determined to find their son at all costs. Meanwhile, the Toronto Police Department intensified their efforts. They broadcast missing person alerts across television networks and deployed over 200 officers to conduct door-to-door inquiries, racing against the clock to rescue Wang Jinlu within the critical 24-hour window following the abduction. What left people utterly speechless was that, beyond the kidnapping itself, public discussions fixated on an unexpected detail: the surveillance equipment. Everyone was asking, what brand are those cameras? How are they so crystal clear? It's hard to blame the curious masses for their peculiar focus. In many Canadian crime cases, you'd be lucky to find a camera within 100 miles. Or, if you did, the resolution would be so pitifully low, almost touchingly so, that suspects would appear as blurry, genderless blobs, indistinguishable from objects. Yet, in this surveillance footage, the clarity was staggering. You could make out the embroidered logo on the sleeve of the kidnappers' Canada Goose puffer jackets, not to mention their builds, heights, and the color and model of their vehicle. Most crucially, the license plate was perfectly legible, beyond marveling at the top-tier quality of the cameras. Giving their manufacturer a free marketing coup, people couldn't help but wonder, why would this apartment complex invest in such a high-end surveillance system? The answer, however, is simple: money. This luxury condominium, located on Birchmount Avenue in Toronto's Markham district, boasts a gym, a year-round heated pool, and a sauna. Completed just a year earlier, every unit sold out in a flash. The cheapest one-bedroom, one-living-room unit starts at $518,000, while the lavish penthouses on the top floors range from $1.48 million to $3.7 million. Truly the Hermes of condos. According to the building management, the two-bedroom, two-living-room unit owned by Wanjin Liu, while not the priciest in the complex, came with 4 dedicated parking spaces. These housed not only his Land Rover Range Rover, but also a Rolls-Royce Wraith, a Ferrari 488 GTB, and a Lamborghini Huracan. Wanjin even flaunted a bundle of supercar keys on social media. A glance at Wanjin Liu's social media accounts reveals a relentless parade of extravagance. Supercars, gourmet cuisine, stunning women, designer clothes, shoes, belts, and high-end phones. If it could be flaunted, he didn't miss a beat. While others study abroad to learn, Wanjin seemed to be starring in a reality show about the lives of the ultra-rich. His daily routine, showing off wealth and then showing off more wealth. As for the woman accompanying him, police initially suspected she might be an accomplice. After all, if the kidnapper's goal was ransom, why let a key witness walk free? And how could she watch her boyfriend get stunned unconscious and dragged away, yet fail to immediately alert the authorities? However, it was later confirmed that she did report the crime after fleeing the building. Her limited English and muddled explanation, compounded by mistakenly giving the wrong address, meant the police didn't take her call seriously at first. As a result, it wasn't until hours after Wanjin's abduction that officers arrived at the scene. She recounted that, as she and Wanjin noticed 3 men in black blocking their car, they were gesturing animatedly, claiming they were scouting locations for a music video shoot and wanted to use his supercar as a prop. But something felt off. The men were masked, and not a single camera was in sight, hardly the setup for a film crew. She had a sinking feeling and was about to warn Wanjin to stay in the car. Before she could speak, the naive young heir stepped out, grinning, convinced these strangers had impeccable taste, and recognized the value of his car, perhaps even assuming they were kindred spirits who appreciated luxury. Within seconds, he was overpowered and whisked away, leaving her stunned in the passenger seat. The police were left speechless by her account. The kidnapper's appearance and behavior practically screamed, "We're here to rob you." Yet Wanjin had eagerly approached them, all smiles, as if making new friends. Compared to his father, Mr. Liu, who had berated the police over the phone as scammers, Wanjin's lack of caution was staggering. If he'd inherited even a fraction of his father's wariness, he might not have been packaged up and taken in less than a round. Given Wanjin's ostentatious habits and lavish lifestyle, the police strongly suspected the motive was financial. A classic case of a mountain bandit targeting the foolish son of a wealthy family. Fortunately, the surveillance cameras proved invaluable. Though slightly grainy, the footage clearly showed 3 burly men in black. A major breakthrough came from the van's license plate. The vehicle was traced to 2 Somali brothers with prior theft convictions, frequent flyers at the local police station. Just as the police prepared to apprehend them, a dramatic twist unfolded. On the night of March 27th at 9 p.m., in a farmhouse in Gravenhist, a small town over 100 miles from Toronto, a young Chinese man was seen frantically banging on a door, pleading for help. For context, this quaint tongue-twisting town was, over a century ago, the birthplace of Dr. Norman Bethune, a figure later revered in China. Despite the passage of time, Gravenhist retained its small-town virtues. Simple, kind-hearted folk ready to lend a hand. Though the young man was disheveled, his clothes tattered, his eyes wild with panic, and his English barely coherent, with scratches covering his face and limbs, the warm-hearted farmers opened their door and immediately called the police. Officers arrived swiftly, rushing the man, who identified himself as a lube, to the nearest hospital. Soon after, they confirmed he was indeed Won Jinlu, missing for 3 days. Upon hearing their son was safe, Mr. and Mrs. Zhang raced to the hospital. The family of 3 embraced, sobbing in the hospital room, overjoyed that Won Jun had escaped his captors alive. Won Jun later recounted his ordeal. After being forced into the vehicle, the kidnappers stripped him down to his underwear. They dressed him in cheap clothing, chained his hands and feet, and taped his mouth shut, forcing him to relieve himself where he sat. Over 3 days, he was given only 1 meal on the first day. For a young man accustomed to a life of luxury, this was sheer torment. The physical suffering paled in comparison to the mental anguish. Unable to understand the kidnappers' daily mutterings, he was left wondering whether they would collect a ransom and release him, or simply eliminate their hostage. The torment dragged on until the 3rd night, when they threw a foul-smelling sack over his head and shoved him back into the vehicle. After a bumpy ride, he heard the door open, felt a brutal kick to his backside, and was thrown out into the freezing night. Fortunately, Canada's winter lingered, and a thick layer of snow cushioned his fall, sparing him further injury. Won Jun tore the sack from his head and found himself beside a highway. In thin clothing, he stumbled through the darkness toward a faint light in the distance. A small house. Unable to see clearly, branches scratched his face and limbs, leaving him covered in superficial wounds. Within a week of Won Jun's rescue, the 2 Somali brothers linked to the SUV surrendered to the police. Based on their information, authorities arrested a 22-year-old accomplice, while a 4th suspect was believed to have fled to the United States. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police issued an international warrant for his arrest. One might think that, with the hostage safely returned, the family reunited, and the culprits facing justice, the story had reached a happy ending. But no one could have anticipated the tidal wave of public scrutiny that followed, crashing in wave after wave. The burning questions on everyone's minds: why was Won Jun targeted? And why was he so abruptly released? According to the confessions of the 2 Somali brothers, they had been watching Won Jinlu for quite some time. This young man, cruising through Toronto streets in a flashy supercar that changed almost as often as the glamorous women by his side, was a walking spectacle of wealth. His ostentatious displays provoked a mix of awe, envy, and resentment in these petty thieves, eventually sparking their sinister intentions. Their initial plan was simple: rob him of his cash and the gold Rolex gleaming on his wrist. But when they took him down in mere seconds, a bolder idea emerged. Why not kidnap the kid and squeeze some money out of his wealthy relatives and friends? This impromptu kidnapping plot, however, quickly unraveled into a series of unforeseen challenges. The first hurdle was the ransom demand. Though they found Mr. and Mrs. Zhang's contact information in Won Jun's phone and called to demand payment, the language barrier turned their efforts into a farce, like ducks quacking at thunder. Frustrated, they gave up and turned to Won Jun's shady Toronto friends instead. The results were equally dismal. Some thought it was a prank, while others simply didn't care. After hours of heated arguments and hoarse throats, they finally convinced one friend to relay the message to Mr. and Mrs. Zhang. But that too failed, as Mr. Liu stubbornly dismissed it as a scam. The kidnappers were at their wits' end, their efforts sinking like stones in the sea. For the first time, the abductors were more anxious than the hostages' parents. They couldn't just let Won Jun go. That would be too great a loss after all their trouble. So, they stashed him in a dilapidated basement belonging to a friend, stripped him of anything valuable, and locked him away, hoping to figure out their next move. Then came news that was both a relief and a nightmare. The good news? Mr. and Mrs. Zhang finally believed their precious son had been kidnapped, their transcontinental journey to Toronto, and the ransom demands at last showing some promise. The bad news? The condo's cameras were so crystal clear that even the pimples on the kidnappers' faces were visible. They feared the police would be knocking before they could pocket a dime. Panicked, they moved Won Jun under the cover of night. As the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes, especially when these small-time crooks had no real plan to begin with. Hiding a living, breathing person was no easy feat. Driving aimlessly risked a police interception, and soon, The kidnappers were bickering loudly inside the vehicle. Out of options, they pulled over at a highway bend and unceremoniously kicked Wang Jin out with a swift boot to his backside. But was this really just a tale of a gang of bumbling thieves? Many felt the case was far more complex than it appeared. Consider this. For ruthless kidnappers, driven by greed, releasing their hostage without a single penny? It's as absurd as sharpening a knife, boiling water, and tying a fat pig to the butcher's block, only for the butchers to argue and let the pig waddle free, especially a pig that could run straight to the police. Speculation swirled that the kidnappers must have received some payment to spare Wang Jin's life. Yet, a bizarre contradiction emerged. The Toronto Police Department repeatedly stated that the kidnappers had demanded a ransom from the family, specifically in Bitcoin, a modern twist reflecting their savvy shift away from risky bank transfers or cash handoffs to a harder-to-trace cryptocurrency. An insider even claimed the kidnappers, through one of Wang Jun's girlfriends, had demanded 500 Bitcoin, worth roughly $1.92 million at the time. Mr. Liu, however, insisted he never received any ransom demands, Bitcoin or otherwise. He painted a surprising picture, claiming his son was merely a fake rich kid obsessed with appearances. The luxury condo, the million-dollar supercars, all rented for show, he said. In Canada, he argued, renting a used car is cheap, unlike in China, where supercars come with astronomical price tags. A small deposit and a few hundred Canadian dollars a month, roughly $222, could secure a flashy ride to fuel Wang Jun's facade. Yet, the Toronto Police Department countered with hard evidence. The supercars and the luxury condo were purchased outright in cash by Wang Jun, totaling over $3.7 million, all within his first 5 months in Toronto. So, who exactly was Mr. Liu? Clearly a man of immense wealth. Why did he insist his family was strapped for cash? Curious netizens dug into Mr. Liu's background, and what they uncovered was jaw-dropping. Mr. Liu was no ordinary man. He was a Taoist priest, the president of the Hainan Taoist Association, vice president of the China Taoist Association, and the director of the Jade-Toad Palace in Hainan. His most infamous title? China's richest Taoist. Just how wealthy was Mr. Liu? Some estimated that ticket sales alone from the Jade-Toad Palace brought in tens of millions of USD annually, not counting the donations from worshippers or the sprawling 1,200-acre Taoist complex. A Toronto classmate recalled Wang Jin boasting after a night of heavy drinking that his father owned a building worth billions in Shanghai's ultra-expensive downtown, while his mother was linked to over 10 companies. Wang Jun's only concern in life? How to spend his family's colossal fortune in the most extravagant way possible. The title China's richest Taoist was no exaggeration. The traditional image of a Taoist, aloof, ethereal, untainted by worldly desires like the 7 immortals of Quan Jun, shattered, replaced by a slick, money-drenched Mr. Liu. This sparked a question. How could a Taoist priest amass such wealth and still marry and have children? Mr. Liu had addressed this himself. He belongs to the Zhengyi sect of Taoism, which permits eating meat, marrying, and raising a family. In his words, he could enjoy both worldly pleasures and spiritual practice without conflict. Moreover, he wasn't born into Taoism, but stumbled into it midlife. His first teacher? Astonishingly, an African man. He recounted a trip to South Africa in late 1995 with a business delegation. After wrapping up, they dined at a local restaurant without a translator, staring at a pictureless menu like it was an ancient script. Too proud to admit their confusion, they randomly ordered 4 dishes. Only 2 arrived, replaced by a group of locals who surrounded their table, singing and dancing. The atmosphere was lively, but vibes don't fill stomachs, especially when the bill still charged for 4 dishes. Feeling swindled, Mr. Liu was fuming, ready to confront the restaurant owner. Just then, a black man from a nearby table intervened, speaking fluent Mandarin. "Friend, you did order 4 things," he explained, "but only 2 were dishes. The other 2 were songs. The menu and song list are printed together." Once the misunderstanding was cleared, the man struck up a conversation with Mr. Liu's group. He revealed he had studied in Beijing for years, specializing in Eastern culture, particularly Taoism. Before parting, he gifted Mr. Lu a copy of the Tao Te Ching. From that moment, Mr. Lu's fascination with Taoism took root, and 3 years later, he formally entered the priesthood. It's a story that feels fated. If Mr. Lu knew that decades later, 4 African men would kidnap his son, would he muse that destiny's trials cannot be escaped? But how did an ordinary Taoist become so fabulously wealthy? In 2002, while vacationing in Hainan, Mr. Lu visited Wenbi Peak in Ding'an County. Amidst rolling mountains and misty clouds, he glimpsed a golden glow, a clear sign of prime feng shui land. The local guide confirmed its significance. Legend has it, this is where Bai Yuchan, one of the 5 patriarchs of the Southern School of Taoism, attained immortality. Inspired not by spiritual enlightenment, but by a business opportunity, Mr. Lu returned home and sold off his assets and business ventures, pooling over a decade's worth of savings. He signed a long-term land lease with the Hainan government and tirelessly secured loans. For what? To build a Taoist temple on that sacred ground. The Hainan government, eager to boost cultural tourism, gave him the green light and approved a loan of $49 million. 3 years later, the majestic Jade Toad Palace was complete. Over 20 additional shrines were built nearby, transforming the site into the world's largest Taoist complex, surpassing historic sites like Mount Wudong and Mount Qingcheng. With government backing, it was later designated a national 4A-level tourist attraction, becoming a veritable treasure basin. Ticket revenue was substantial, but Mr. Lu, true to his motto, the faithful may be poor, but this priest does not maximize profits by charging for rituals and turning the temple into an integrated wellness resort, blending health, spirituality, and leisure. Thus, Mr. Lu rose to become China's premier Taoist priest, rivaling Shaolin Temple's abbot Shi Yongxin, who also commands billions in assets. Together, they showed that modern spiritual leaders could scale not only the peaks of faith, but also the Everest of wealth. Yet such wealth made Mr. Lu a target. In 2018, he was embroiled in a scandal when a young woman allegedly swindled him out of $364,000 in just 20 days. She claimed the money was a gift, citing an intimate relationship where they called each other husband and wife in messages. Mr. Lu insisted he was deceived and sued her. In the courtroom, drama dubbed the Taoist versus the vixen, Mr. Lu's deep spiritual prowess prevailed. The woman was sentenced to 15 years in prison, fined $14,000, and ordered to repay over $280,000. Perhaps this ordeal tightened Mr. Lu's anti-scam instincts, explaining his staunch refusal to believe his son was kidnapped. Was it once bitten by a snake? 10 years fearing ropes? Or no matter the scam's tricks, hold fast to your wallet and all will be well? Curiously, the saga of the rich Taoist pampered son took another turn in December 2021, when the 4th suspect was apprehended in Minnesota, USA, after a drunk driving incident. Police found illegal drugs and an unregistered firearm in his car, leading to his detention. A background check revealed he was the fugitive wanted by Canadian police for 3 years. After his arrest, the ringleader quickly confessed, shedding light on lingering questions. He had planned to extort a ransom from Mr. Lu before fleeing, and had indeed demanded 500 Bitcoin through an intermediary. But Mr. Lu's response was baffling. Bitcoin? What's that? Only 500? Is this worth more than US dollars? Exasperated, the kidnapper tried explaining cryptocurrency. What it was, how to buy it, how to transfer it. As his throat grew hoarse, Mr. Lu's retort nearly pushed him over the edge. If this isn't a scam, what is? Defeated by Mr. Lu's unyielding skepticism, the kidnapper gave up, deciding to cut his losses and release Wan Zhan. His role in demanding the ransom earned him the harshest sentence of the 5 years and 6 months in prison. The story's central figure, Wan Zhan, returned to China soon after his rescue. Perhaps Canada felt too perilous, and inheriting his family's vast fortune at home seemed a safer bet. Whether this ordeal taught him, like his father, to learn wisdom from a fall remains unknown. Story 6. On a sweltering summer afternoon in 2019, in a small village in China, two young girls excitedly attempted to recreate a popcorn-making stunt from a viral video by office foodie Mizya. Mere minutes later, a deafening explosion shattered the quiet. One girl lost her life, the other was engulfed in flames, her body ravaged by burns. What began as an innocent game spiraled into a tragedy that ignited a firestorm of outrage and debate online. Who was to blame? The vlogger with hundreds of millions of views? Or the platform that allowed risky content to thrive? Once celebrated as an inspiration, Mizya found herself vilified, branded a social media villain. Yet, behind the scandal lies more than a fall from grace or a disappearance from the digital spotlight. It's the story of Mizya's quiet, resilient, and conflicted journey of redemption. A tale that forces us to confront the very nature of the online world we trust every day. On August 22, 2019, in the stifling midday heat of Liangtan Trang Village, Yong'an Town, Shandong Province, China, Mrs. Li Mei was dozing lightly when a dull boom jolted her awake from the house next door. At first, she dismissed it as the usual mischief of neighborhood kids and hesitated to get out of bed. But moments later, a blood-curdling scream shattered the village's tranquility. "Help! Save JJ!" Panicked, Mrs. Li rushed to her neighbor's house and froze at the horrifying sight before her. 14-year-old Xiao Jia lay motionless on the floor, her body charred. Her clothes melted into her scorched skin. Beside her, 12-year-old Xiao Yu sobbed uncontrollably, screaming for adults to save her friend. The room reeked of burnt alcohol, with scattered soda cans littering the floor. The desperate cries drew neighbors rushing to the scene. A man nearby braved the smoke and flames to carry JJ outside. Her body was catastrophically burned, her skin a raw, blistered red, barely an inch left unmarred. When JJ's 18-year-old sister, Qiu Xinran, arrived, she collapsed in shock, cradling her trembling sister. Amid excruciating pain, JJ managed to stop her sister with a frail, haunting question. "Sis, is my face ruined?" From a young age, JJ had loved dressing up, always conscious of her appearance. Despite the agony coursing through her body, she shed no tears, only whispering to comfort her sister, "I can handle it." Bystanders stood helpless, waiting for the ambulance in a haze of despair. None had the expertise to treat severe burns. Someone tried calling the 120 emergency line for guidance, but received no clear instructions. JJ lay in their arms, her face and eyes disfigured, her hands clawed and immobile from incinerated muscles and tendons. Each second dragged on, heavy with dread. It took 10 to 15 agonizing minutes for the ambulance to arrive. JJ and Xiaoyu were rushed to the city hospital in critical condition. Meanwhile, Chu Kong, JJ's father, was working at a machine shop over 12 miles away when a frantic call came from an acquaintance. "Your daughter's been burned." Thinking it might be a minor accident, he dropped everything, hoping it wasn't life-threatening. But before he could reach home, another call from Xinran, choked with sobs, shattered that hope. "Don't go home, Dad. Come straight to the hospital." A chilling premonition gripped him. He raced back to the village, but his phone died, cutting off all contact. Stranded without communication, he begged directions from strangers, each minute an eternity of torment. At the hospital, the doctors delivered a devastating diagnosis. That Zheji had burns covering 96% of her body. A horrific figure with nearly every inch from head to toe reduced to blackened necrotic tissue. The doctors were blunt with the family. "Treatment will only drain your resources. Her chances of survival are near zero." Still, the family refused to give up, insisting the doctors do everything possible. Zheji was rushed to intensive care, teetering on the brink of death. As doctors fought to save the girls, the cause of the explosion remained a mystery. At the scene, investigators found several punctured soda cans, some crudely assembled into strange shapes, next to a charred 1-kilogram plastic container of 95% industrial alcohol. Local police initially classified it as a severe accident. Xiaoyu, who miraculously survived but suffered severe burns to her face and hands, remained lucid enough to recount the chilling events from her hospital bed. Her words unveiled the gruesome truth behind the tragedy. That afternoon, Xiaoyu and Zheji were alone at home. Xiaoyu's father, Bang Xiaoquan, was working far away, and both girls' mothers were pulling overtime at a nearby textile factory. To pass the time, the girls went to Xiaoyu's house, where they could piggyback on a neighbor's free Wi-Fi to binge videos. Like many rural kids, they were obsessed with short video apps like Douyin and Kuaishou. After lunch, they locked the door and scrolled through videos on Zheji's hand-me-down phone from her sister. Around 3:30 p.m., a Douyin video caught their attention. A woman using a soda can and an alcohol lamp to make popcorn at her desk, the kernels bursting in a mesmerizing display. Thrilled, Zheji exclaimed, "This is awesome, let's try it." Without hesitation, the girls set out to recreate the experiment. The video, created by Chinese vlogger Zhou Xiaowei, known as Xiaoye or Ms. Ye, demonstrated how to make popcorn in an office using a soda can, an alcohol lamp, and a metal stand. With tens of millions of views, the clip's creative and humorous style captivated audiences. But it unwittingly inspired a catastrophic mistake by two impressionable young girls. According to Xiaoyu, they scoured the house for materials to mimic the video. Xiaoyu remembered a 1-kilogram canister of 95% industrial alcohol her father hid behind the sofa, used to disinfect wounds from his construction job. They dragged it into the living room. They gathered 3 aluminum Pepsi cans. Zheji used scissors to cut one can into a makeshift pot, punching a hole in its side and filling it with corn kernels and sugar. A second can was sliced into a crude stand. Lacking an alcohol lamp like in the video, they improvised with the third can, cutting it in half, pouring alcohol into the base, and twisting toilet paper into a wick to create a lamp. Thus, a rudimentary popcorn stove was born from seemingly harmless household items. With preparations complete, Zheji crouched as the head chef, while Xiaoyu assisted. First, everything went smoothly. They lit the toilet paper wick in their makeshift lamp and placed the corn-filled can on the stand. But when the kernels didn't pop as expected, they assumed they needed more alcohol. Zheji grabbed the canister to pour more, and as she tilted it, the canister exploded violently, unleashing a fireball in the cramped room. Flames engulfed Zheji, whose short-sleeved t-shirt and synthetic track pants fueled the fire, melting into her skin. Xiaoyu, in a panic, fled to an inner room by instinct, but felt her face burning. Despite searing pain, she ran back, scooped water from a well, and doused Zheji to extinguish the flames. Her brave acts subdued the fire, but Zheji lay motionless, her eyes wide open in shock from the severe burns. Zheji's smoke-damaged phone became a critical clue. The Douyin app was still open, its history revealing the last video the girls watched. Ms. Ye's popcorn in a soda can clip from her office Xiaoye channel. Filmed in 2017, the video carried no safety warnings. In it, Ms. Yi used a glass alcohol lamp to heat the popcorn can, making the process look simple, approachable, even safe. When the cause was confirmed, the victims' families were livid. Both Zheji's and Xiaoyu's parents argued that Douyin and Ms. Yi bore responsibility. In his despair, Chu Kong, Zheji's father, repeatedly called Douyin's hotline, only to be met with a curt dismissal. "This is beyond our responsibility." Ms. Yi and her team quietly removed the video from all platforms without explanation or apology, deepening the family's sense of abandonment. The story exploded on Chinese social media. On Weibo, the hashtag Office Xiaoye rocketed to the top as news of the girls' attempt to mimic the video spread. Though early reports obscured the vlogger's identity, netizens quickly identified her, unleashing a torrent of rage. Many changed her profile picture to grayscale, branding her a killer. Comments flooded her posts. "She's dodging responsibility. Prosecute her for reckless clickbait." On Zhihu, a discussion thread about the incident drew over 8 million views and nearly 2,000 comments. More than half blamed Ms. Yi and her team for failing to include safety warnings. Others criticized the girls' parents for neglect, while some condemned Douyin for inadequate content moderation. Amid the public's fury, Ms. Yi vanished from social media for weeks. It wasn't until September 10, 2019, nearly 3 weeks after the tragedy, that she broke her silence with a lengthy Weibo post. "These have been the darkest days of my life," she began. expressing profound pain and remorse for the tragedy. She apologized to the girls' families, vowed to remove all potentially harmful videos, and announced an indefinite hiatus to overhaul her channel. She also pledged to do everything in her power to support the victims' families through their loss. However, when it came to legal responsibility, Xiaoya, Ms. Yi, firmly denied being the direct cause of the tragedy. The accident involving Zhezhe and Xiaoyu wasn't caused by mimicking my video, she insisted. She pointed out that countless popcorn-making videos existed online, and the girl's methods starkly differed from hers. I only used a tin can and an alcohol lamp, far safer. The girls used 2 cans and no lamp at all. She also claimed that, since 2017, her video had included a warning not to try it in an office setting, and that she consistently cautioned viewers against attempting her stunts. Her defense, however, did little to soothe the victims' families' pain, and sparked an immediate firestorm of debate on social media. Tens of thousands of comments flooded her post. One side fiercely criticized her, arguing that content creators bear a moral duty. The other defended her, asserting that the bulk of the blame lay with the parents who allowed their children access to dangerous materials like alcohol and fire. The public's outrage weighed heavily not only on Xiaoya, but also on the victims' families, who were grappling to hold on to faint hope for their children's survival, while enduring a relentless storm of scrutiny. Amid this chaos, Zhezhe's family sought legal counsel. A Shanghai-based lawyer even reached out to Chu Kong, her father, offering pro bono assistance. The lawyer explained that, legally, holding Douyin accountable would be challenging, while Xiaoya could be seen as more directly involved. According to some Chinese legal experts, primary responsibility rested with the girls' parents for failing to supervise and equip their children with safety knowledge. Next in line was Xiaoya, whose highly influential content lacked adequate warnings. She had previously admitted that some of her videos were risky. She herself had been burned and singed her eyelashes while filming a hand-grilled fish stunt, yet posted it without cautions. Finally, Douyin, as the platform, wasn't entirely blameless for allowing potentially harmful content to circulate without proper warning labels. While the debate over fault and accountability raged, the Chu family's sole focus was fighting for Zhezhe's life. Thanks to fundraising efforts led by Chu Kang's colleagues, hundreds of compassionate donors helped cover treatment costs. Doctors at Zhaozhuang Hospital poured their expertise into saving her. On August 25th and 27th, 2019, Zhezhe underwent 2 skin graft surgeries to restore severely damaged areas on her legs and arms. Throughout her treatment, Zhezhe remained conscious. Due to the risk of respiratory burns, doctors performed a tracheotomy upon admission, leaving her unable to speak. Yet she communicated through blinks or faint whispers of she when pain overwhelmed her. Her 50-year-old mother never left her side, changing her bandages nearly 90 times each night, pushing herself to exhaustion but refusing to rest. She leaned against the ICU's glass window, whispering encouragement. "Zhezhe, Mom's waiting out here. You have to stay strong." Her 8-year-old brother, after school, insisted on visiting, convinced that she will get better soon and play with me like before. Everyone clung to hope for a medical miracle. Tragically, that miracle never came. In early September, Zhezhe's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. On September 3rd, before a 3rd surgery, doctors found her in a deep coma, unresponsive, unable to withstand anesthesia. The surgery was cancelled and she never woke again. On the morning of September 5th, 2019, after 14 days of valiant struggle, Zhezhe's small heart stopped beating. Despite desperate attempts at CPR, she couldn't be saved. She passed away at 14, an age just old enough to dream, to idolize a social media vlogger who would now forever be tied to her tragedy. Though this case had no villain in the literal sense, it was a stark tragedy born of ignorance and negligence. Zhezhe's death was the heartbreaking consequence of childish curiosity colliding with the blind allure of viral social media videos. The incident ignited a polarized, often vicious, online response in China, with extreme opinions targeting both Xiao Yi and the victims' families. This revealed the power and the dark side of online discourse. Threats and insults solved nothing, only deepening the wounds of those involved. Rather than mob outrage, the public needed clarity, viewing the incident through both legal and ethical lenses. A tragedy doesn't end when headlines fade. It leaves lasting scars on everyone touched by it. Xiao Yi would carry physical and emotional trauma for life. Zhezhe's family, despite their profound loss, chose not to harbor resentment or point fingers, hoping no one else would endure their pain. Their forgiveness stands as a testament to compassion amid adversity. Zhezhe's death is a painful wake-up call for parents, content creators, and tech companies alike. Preventing future tragedies requires a safer, more humane digital landscape, where creativity is paired with responsibility and children's curiosity is guided and protected. To fully grasp this tragedy, we must look at the life of the victim and the figure who unwittingly led her to this fateful end. Qiu Zhezhe, born in 2005, was the second of 3 children in a poor farming family. Her parents, both in their 40s, scraped by as laborers. Her mother worked piece rate at a textile factory, her father at a machine shop. Their income barely covered daily needs. Despite their struggles, they prioritized their children's education. Zhezhe's older sister, Qiu Xianran, had just passed her college entrance exams in 2019, a source of immense family pride. Zhezhe, about to enter 8th grade, was a gentle, dutiful girl brimming with warmth. At school, she wasn't a standout but was loved for her kind, approachable nature. At home, she helped with chores and sometimes brought meals to her mother at the factory. Thoughtful and caring, she remembered friends' birthdays and crafted gifts by hand. Like many teenage girls, Zhezhe loved makeup and fashion, styling her hair, trying on lipstick, gazing in the mirror. She also had a passion for drawing, once begging her parents for art lessons. But their tight finances forced her to teach herself, pouring her love for color onto paper. That summer of 2019, Zhezhe spent her days in the village with her best friend, Xiaoyu, who lived less than 200 meters away. The two were inseparable, watching TV, drawing, and scrolling through videos on a phone. Without her own device, Zhezhe borrowed her sister's old smartphone or used Xiaoyu's neighbor's Wi-Fi. Platforms like Douyin and Kuaishou opened a magical world of captivating content to their young, impressionable minds. But that innocent curiosity was misplaced when they stumbled across Ms. Ye's popcorn-making video and decided to try it themselves. As for Ms. Ye, whose real name is Zhou Xiaohui, she was a social media sensation in China. Born in 1994 in Chengdu, Sichuan province, and trained in dance, she pivoted to video content creation and skyrocketed to fame with her office cuisine series. From cooking hot pot with a water dispenser to grilling meat with an iron, steaming buns on an air purifier, or frying pancakes in a computer case, her wildly creative ideas captivated viewers. Her wordless videos, driven by visuals and music, transcended language barriers, amassing a global audience. By 2017, her Ms. Ye channel racked up tens of millions of views per video, one hitting 100 million in days. Chinese media hailed her as the top creative cuisine influencer. Brands clamored to collaborate, paying up to 500,000 Chinese yuan, roughly $70,000, for product placement. Despite YouTube being blocked in China, her channel hit 7.5 million subscribers by 2019, with 17 million followers on Douyin and 8.1 million on Weibo. From an ordinary employee, Xiaoye rose to vice director of a media company, embodying a new generation of content creators. But fame came with hidden costs. Her daring cooking style drew warnings. In March 2018, after a video of frying pancakes in a computer case, Chengdu's fire department posted a Weibo caution about its influence on youth. Xiaoye herself had been burned while filming the hand-grilled fish stunt, flames singeing her eyelashes, an accident she later admitted stemmed from carelessness. Yet, chasing views, she pushed boundaries further, adding only a small "do not imitate" disclaimer as a flimsy shield. Zhezhe and Xiaoyu's tragedy was a searing wake-up call for her reckless content. The shock led her to halt her channel, disband her team, and close her studio. Plagued by a mental health crisis, she lost faith in the work she once loved. From a star with millions of views, she faced a backlash that sent her audience plummeting. Media dubbed her a one-time phenomenon that collapsed overnight. For Xiaoyu, surviving the explosion came at a steep cost. Her face, deeply burned, remained swathed in bandages for days before healing into a patchwork of scars. Her hands, tightly wrapped, could barely move. The 12-year-old was unaware that her friend Zhezhe had passed away. Her family hid the truth, fearing the shock would break her. In the hospital, Xiaoyu clung to the hope of recovering soon to visit Zhezhe, believing she was being treated elsewhere. Night after night, she jolted awake from nightmares of raging flames. Staring at her bandaged hands, she whispered regrets. If only we had money to buy popcorn from the store. If only I'd told my friends to wait until the fire was out before pouring more alcohol. Guilt enveloped her young heart like a shadow. Her father, Peng Xiaoquan, was consumed by remorse. Knowing the canister of industrial alcohol he brought home had indirectly caused the tragedy. He sat in silence, wiping away tears, muttering self-reproach. In this tragedy, no one had the strength to cast blame. Everyone had already lost too much. After Zhezhe's death, the question of legal accountability grew urgent. Yet, instead of pursuing a lawsuit, the victims' families chose civil negotiations with vlogger Xiaoyu Mizya. On September 16, 2019, her representatives met directly with Zhezhe's family. They agreed to pay an undisclosed sum to cover funeral costs and committed to funding all of Xiaoya's medical expenses, including reconstructive surgeries for the surviving victim. Negotiations with Xiaoya's family took longer but were eventually finalized. Though Xiaoya consistently denied legal liability, her representative expressed her desire to support both families, regardless of who was right or wrong, as a way to ease her conscience and public criticism. Authorities filed no criminal charges against Xiaoya or Duyin, classifying the incident as a self-inflicted accident. However, precedents existed. In 2013, a Chinese court ordered the producers of the animated series Pleasant Goat and Big Big Wolf to pay 40,000 Chinese yuan, approximately $5,600 to the family of two boys severely burned, while mimicking a fire-related stunt from the show. This case reignited calls for stricter regulation of digital content and clearer accountability for creators. This tragedy became a costly lesson for society. It jolted parents awake to the dangers lurking in life hack videos online. In the digital age, a smartphone grants children, rural or urban, access to age-inappropriate content. Teaching life skills and vigilant supervision have never been more critical to prevent online pranks from turning into real-world tragedies. For content creators, the incident was a stark warning about professional ethics. Are views and fame worth risking lives? Creators who once overlooked safety must face their mistakes and make amends. Xiaoya herself admitted to sleepless nights, haunted by online threats, and even contemplating abandoning her career. From September 2019, Xiaoya halted video uploads amid relentless criticism. Many of her older, riskier videos quietly vanished from social platforms. Advertising contracts were frozen. On her personal page, she occasionally shared glimpses of sleepless nights, silent tears, and doubts about continuing her career. After nearly a month in hiding, Ms. Xia returned in October 2019. In a short video posted on October 14th, she credited loyal fans for giving her strength to carry on. The video carried a bolded warning in its title, "Creative content. Do not imitate." This became a mandatory feature in all her future videos. She also revamped her production process to prioritize fire safety and pledged to engage in community initiatives to atone and rebuild public trust. Yet, each new video drew harsh comments accusing her of shamelessness for continuing. Still, loyal fans stood by her, arguing that everyone makes mistakes and she had paid enough. Surprisingly, the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020 inadvertently eased the pressure on Xiaoya. As public attention shifted to global concerns and online entertainment surged during lockdowns, her videos saw a gentler reception. However, her golden era was over. Her 2020 to 2021 content lacked the viral spark of her past work, with viewership plummeting and her signature playful energy dimmed. Fans noted that the old Xiaoya is gone, replaced by a more cautious, reserved creator shaped by her ordeal. By 2024, Miss Xia's YouTube channel retained nearly 14 million subscribers, an impressive feat, though largely a remnant of her peak. Actual viewership had sharply declined, highlighting a gap between subscribers and engagement. By 2022, she stopped producing long-form videos, as they garnered only a few 100,000 views, far below expectations for her team and sponsors. To adapt, she pivoted to short-form videos under 60 seconds, a trend dominating YouTube. This strategy paid off modestly. Many shorts hit 1 to 2 million views, some reaching 5 to 8 million. While far from her million views per minute heyday, it showed a loyal audience still followed her quietly. Across various platforms, Miss Xia's once vibrant presence has noticeably waned. On Facebook, her 5.1 million followers see her videos garner only a few hundred views, with scant comments signaling a startling drop in engagement. Her verified Instagram account, with 280,000 followers, posts irregularly, drawing only modest interaction. In China, Douyin, where she once captivated over 25 million fans in 2019, now reflects a sharp decline in interest despite a still robust follower count. This erosion has hit her finances hard. Once raking in millions monthly from sponsorships and ad deals, she now relies on sparsely sponsored short videos, facing mounting financial pressure. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she confessed that parting ways with Onion Group to start her own studio brought relentless strain. The challenge of funding her team, sustaining creativity, and keeping her venture afloat left her drained and anxious, a key driver behind her pivotal choice. In January 2024, Xiaoya shocked her audience by announcing an indefinite pause to her office cooking series, the hallmark content that had skyrocketed her to fame. In a candid video posted on January 9th, she explained her decision, creative exhaustion, an inability to surpass her former glory, and dwindling metrics in views, engagement, and media impact. She also opened up about the brutal realities of being an independent influencer, balancing relentless creative demands with managing a small business without steady sponsorship. With her passion dimmed, Ms. Yi dissolved her production team, vacated her office, and brought her iconic office cuisine series to a close. "I need to reset to zero," she said, focusing on what truly sparks joy, creating videos about home cooking, sharing personal passions like swimming and crafting, and diving into simpler, more heartfelt themes. In her reinvented image, she radiates simplicity, calm, and vitality, a woman unshackled from her past embracing the present. Her bold shift resonated with many online. Devoted fans praised her bravery for breaking free from her gilded cage. One remarked, "Xiaoya is no longer the office foodie, but she remains a beacon of inspiration, resilient, accountable, and ready to rebuild from scratch." Rumors on social media hint that she quietly supports burn victim charities and aids rural children in accessing safe internet. Though she avoids publicizing these efforts, such gestures reveal her ongoing commitment to social responsibility, a silent reckoning with her past errors. Ms. Ye's story remains a seminal case study for China's content creators, a sobering reminder of internet fame's darker side. The tragedy prompted stricter regulations, bans on children participating in hazardous challenges, and mandates for clear warnings on risky content. Many vloggers now weave safety advisories into their videos, and some DIY channels collaborate with fire departments to create child safety tutorials. Though born of heartbreak, Ms. Ye's case has driven creators to confront their ethical duties and societal impact more earnestly. Over time, the office foodie persona has faded, giving way to a wiser woman who owns her mistakes, lives with purpose, and tells stories in a voice that's authentic, unpretentious, and rich with depth. Her evolution transcends a mere career pivot. It signals the growth of a seasoned creator, bold enough to let go of stardom to rediscover herself. Content creators must muster the strength to face, rectify, and grow from their missteps. As she once said, "Thank you for standing by me. I'll keep forging ahead, wildly as ever." Her fans can anticipate a hopeful new chapter for the once celebrated office foodie. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.